who have stewarded it throughout the generations. We want to further acknowledge the impact of the forced removal, violence, and attempted erasure of the lives and legacies of Indigenous people, past and present, and to commit to creating an educational environment that honors Indigenous history and contributions and encourages the continual pursuit of better stewardship of the land that we inhabit as well. We also want to take some time and share a bit about our friend and colleague Hua Win that passed today. She made a profound impact on this district and in the state and on, I think, all of us individually. I know for me, I'm very grateful for the time I got to have with her and what I've learned from her and her tenacity, her bravery, her sense of servitude. I know that she saw her role here as one of a calling to show up fully in herself and bring her lived experience and her professional experience and to do everything she could to serve this community, and with a future sense. You know, I think she had a really profound way of thinking long term about decision making, and she's deeply missed and loved, and I'm just really grateful and miss her in this space tonight. So I would like to open up to anyone who wants to share, or not. No pressure to, but. While everyone's thinking about that, I do want to read also a statement from past board chair Donna Barber. She shared with me this to read tonight. I am so grateful to have had the opportunity to serve the David Douglas District alongside Hua Win. She was a steady, compassionate presence who reminded and encouraged us all to consider the voices of marginalized students and families, and who willingly and persistently stepped up to represent them well. I'm grateful to have known her.
For me, it's kind of been a whirlwind of how I went from someone who didn't even have a citizenship to being involved in the Democratic Party, to walking doors with Hua, to then all of a sudden in the last essentially year and a half being on this board and the Oregon OSBA and now president-elect of OSBA. And a lot of that was Hua. When she first ran for her seat, there were a lot of really incendiary messages and flyers going around about her that weren't true. So she was nervous to just walk alone. And because I'm disabled, walking doors on my own was not easy. So instead, I would just walk with Hua. And this is when I had just gotten involved. I was helping people with the school board campaigns, but I wasn't really involved in any substantial way other than that. And she really taught me a lot about how to be in these spaces. And then just seeing how she was, when she committed to something, she committed to it, and no amount of new things she took on would let her drop her commitment prematurely. She was such a hard worker. She did so much that she taught me a lot about how you should be in certain spaces and the best way you can be. So I think she brought out the best in other people because she exemplified that in what she did. Yeah, I'm going to miss her.
I don't think I can talk tonight, but I miss her.
I don't know that I have the words either, and I would repeat a lot what would say or echo or champion. I will say the deep impact will be felt in our district because of her care. And I think that's what I miss the most and will think about the most is just her care for our community, our entire community, the way she showed up in this space, even when she was torn in so many different directions because of her care, because she was working for our district at so many different levels. And another word, it was probably already said, but I just want to throw in kindness. She was always, anytime I saw her in this space or other, it's how are you? How are things? And it was sincere, and she was just always checking in on how are we? How are you? How are things? And I'll always remember that.
Hua represented kind of the best of our district, and really what a loving, caring individual can do here, despite a lot of things. I got to share this with Hua, that I once had an unexpected visitor through like a visiting dinner program through like World Oregon or something, from Southeast Asia, and we were showing them campaign materials as examples of democracy here, and they recognized Hua, and they said, "We know her. We all know her story." So she made ripples close and around the world.
I think many on the board know, but maybe others in the room don't. I'm here because of Hua. At first, I just knew her as my really nice neighbor who walked a very cute dog around. And then when I found out who she was, we became friends. And everything that you're saying about her rings true, just in a personal, like person-to-person way. When Hua made the decision to focus on her role at the state and her treatment, and decided not to run again for re-election at the board, I ran at her with her encouragement and blessing, and she was just the best in all ways, mentoring me through the process. And I don't take this lightly. I take this role with a lot of responsibility, and I see it as my duty to continue her values and her dedication to the district, and so I'll do my best to do that.
Thank you. All right, next on the agenda, we will move on to Jacob, your student body president report.
Hey, okay, let me move this. HOCO was just October 3rd. It was an overall really great event. Everybody seemed to enjoy the HOCO assembly the day of as well. And I don't want to say we had the biggest, because I'm not quite sure, but we had one of the biggest turns out for HOCO ever, which was 736 people, which beat our goal of 700. And it's just amazing, because last year I think there was only 600, so it's really seeing how it's just amazing. And our homecoming court was revealed at halftime. We had our club fair on September 23rd with over 20 clubs promoting themselves. I know some clubs had record signups, which is really great and shows how involved our students want to be. And specifically, Key Club, which is involved in volunteering, had 90 people show up to a meeting, which was an amazing turnout. And then because of the success of our fall sports, we're going to have a pep rally on October 30th. So far, our teams are doing great. Our girls soccer program is top 5 in the state, and they were just top 3, which is amazing. And our cheer team, which just held a Mount Hood Conference cheerleading comp, had continuously got first in each and every event. And then going off of sports, we have a new thing at Douglas called Hype Nights, and these are nights where we really encourage students to come to games and cheer. So girls soccer, volleyball, and football all had theirs, and it seemed to be a good turnout at all games. And our next hype night is October 13th for boys soccer, and I really recommend going to this because this is the last hype night of the fall season. And then I wanted to share some student concerns regarding a newly formed club at our school called Club America. This club appears to be established. Oh, I got signed out. Okay, wait, no, I'm not back. I think I'm so sorry. I think it's the Wi-Fi, because this has happened like all my teachers when presenting. Okay, I'm back. So sorry about that. So I'll start from the beginning. I wanted to share some student concerns regarding a newly formed club at our school called Club America. This club appears to be established by the recent passing of Charlie Kirk, and it reflects some of his personal ideologies. Several students have expressed confusion and discomfort about the club's presence, especially given current events and how they impact many members of our school community. This club has became a topic of significant discussion among students, and I just wanted to bring this forward due to the controversy with students. The first club meeting was held yesterday on October 8th, but was canceled about 10 minutes in. This happened because a number of students attended who either did not share Charlie Kirk's views or were uncertain about the club's lesson plan. These students remained peaceful in the classroom to observe and understand what the club intended to cover.
Thank you. Now we'll move on to public comment. Stephanie Myrie, welcome.
Hello, it's good to see you all again. Give me a minute to pull up my comments. Hello, my name is Stephanie Myrie, and I am a 5th grade teacher at Cherry Park Elementary and a proud member of DDEA. I'm here tonight on behalf of myself and DDEA to share how saddened we all are at the passing of Hua Win. I had the privilege to meet and talk with her multiple times over the past several years. She was one of the most lovely people I have ever met and had such a big heart for service. Hua was an educator in the North Clackamas ESD. She was a proud union member in OEA. She was a school board member in this district, which I love, and a state representative. She was so committed to advocating for students' needs, pushing for more equitable practices, and celebrating the many cultures that we have in our area and in our school district. Throughout her battle with cancer, she stayed committed to her work because it was important. She never gave up fighting for cancer. She never gave up fighting for our students and what she believed was right. We will miss her kindness, her sense of humor, and the light that she brought to this world. We are so thankful to have known her and to have experienced her dedication to progress and education, as well as in the greater world around her. She will be missed. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. Second, can we welcome Amy Spencer, please? Welcome.
So I am here to talk about disrupted learning. My name is Amy Spencer, and I teach 3rd grade at Gilbert Park Elementary. I've always wanted to teach in a diverse school district, and since I was hired in 2014, I have felt like this is the place where I should be. I remember the feeling of waking up and being so excited to get to school and start prepping and teaching, and even on the hardest days, I always looked forward to coming back. Unfortunately, things changed drastically for me within the last 6 years. Behaviors have gotten significantly worse, and I felt very helpless a lot of the time. During the 2023-24 school year, I almost left teaching completely. I had a student who destroyed my classroom, broke my belongings, and vandalized my desk and curriculum materials. They stabbed me in the shoulder area multiple times with a pencil and scratched my arm so badly that I have a literal scar that I see every day. And that was nothing compared to the damage that was done to our administration and leadership team. Bruises, pulled hair, black eyes, and broken glasses, to name a few. The trauma that this child has experienced in their 8 short years of life is horrible. And the trauma that my class, staff, and especially me experienced is also horrible. It took almost the entire school year for them to be placed in a classroom that better suited their needs, and that was fast compared to other cases. My students suffered that year. They lost out on valuable learning time and experiences. I lost the little passion I had left to teach, and it wasn't until this school year, actually, that I started to feel some of the excitement of teaching again. I still deal with blurt outs and interruptions that make it extremely difficult to teach, but I finally feel a little bit safer in my space. My classroom is my second home, and everyone, including myself, should feel respected and safe there. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can we welcome Joe Spinrad? Welcome.
Thank you for your time. I'm also here to talk about disrupted learning. And I am also a 3rd grade teacher at Gilbert Park. This is my 3rd year teaching at Gilbert Park, and I also love teaching there for many of the reasons Amy suggested. I've really enjoyed this year, starting off the year and forming those connections with my new students. It's one of my favorite parts of the job. But this is also my 3rd year experiencing significant difficulties with extreme behaviors from a single student affecting learning in a significant way for the rest of my class. My first year at Gilbert Park, I had a student who would shout out to intentionally disrupt lessons, overturn desks and chairs, throw things across the room, destroy materials, and hit people at random. My second year, I had a very different student with very different difficult behaviors. This student had multiple instances involving sexual harassment and physically attacking other students. Fighting was frequent in my classroom and often unexpected by the other students involved. After this student used scissors to attack another student, our class could no longer have scissors available for students and had to have them locked up in the classroom, so no more collages or cut and paste activities. This year, I have a student with behaviors that include swearing at and insulting others, throwing things, destroying materials, their own and the school's, knocking over or climbing on desks and chairs, leaving the classroom without telling anyone, blocking the classroom door from the outside, threatening, shoving, hitting, and physically fighting with others. The last 2 years, I utilized every tool in my toolbox: incentives, check and check out sheets, buddy classrooms, walks with my instructional assistant. My administration was incredibly helpful in the ways that they could be. And we were able to help these students make even some academic progress getting through the year. This year, I am going through all those same steps. I'm trying everything I've got, with one notable exception. This year, I have no instructional assistant at all. The disruptions themselves are terrible, but the long-term effects are the worst part. My other students come to class, and I wonder, how are they supposed to focus on learning when they have to sit in the same room and worry that they might get attacked by a classmate, or have their body violated, or their belongings destroyed? Students have told me how frustrated they are that we can't get through a lesson, but my heart really breaks when they tell me that they are simply scared to be in our classroom. I understand that feeling deeply because I have shared those same feelings of fear and frustration. I would estimate during my short 2+ year career at Gilbert Park, I have lost an average throughout that time of about an hour a day of instructional time. Totaled out, that means in 1 year, my other students are missing out about 200 hours of instructional time. And that is a pretty conservative estimate. Now, I have absolutely no regrets about making every effort I could to help those students who have those difficult behaviors. But I am deeply disappointed when I think about those missed opportunities to uphold those connections with my other students that I have had to let go of because of a few. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Can we now welcome Joanna Friedman? Welcome.
Hi, this is my 5th year in the district, and I have similar stories to my colleagues who have just spoken, but I want to focus on this year. My name is Joanna Friedman, and this is my 2nd year teaching kindergarten at Gilbert Park. I want to start off by saying I'm extremely fortunate to have a small class size of 19 this year compared to 29 last year. My students are incredibly kind, caring, and eager to learn. My biggest challenge this year is not having enough support for one of my students. I'm lucky to have an instructional assistant all day, but the time she's on break, I'm not able to support my students in the room. And this is when disruptive learning happens the most. I have a student with an IEP who struggles to communicate, climbs on top of desks, teacher chairs, counters, cubbies where fans are on top of, and today my printer. I have to run across the room to make sure this child is safe every 30 seconds, having the rest of my class waiting on the carpet or at their desks, losing important instructional minutes. The parent of this child reached out saying that their doctor recommended a one-on-one. When I emailed my admin and special education teacher, I was disheartened to hear that the district is denying all one-on-ones, even with notes from medical professionals. This doesn't sit right with me. I don't know how I can properly serve this individual student and my class when we are being denied support. Disruptive learning doesn't appear out of nowhere. If the school district doesn't meet the needs of students in our classroom, we should expect disrupted learning. 2 of our school's commitments this year are improving instruction and teaching with joy. If I'm unable to instruct my class and worried about my student getting hurt from climbing, I fear I'm failing to achieve this year's school commitments. If we want students to thrive, grow, and become independent and critical thinkers, something needs to change and be done. All I can wonder is what happens next year when this child doesn't have an assistant all day? How can we ensure safety for both students and staff? What can the district do to help better support teachers and students, to help improve instruction, and have the school be a place of joy, curiosity, knowledge, and wonder? Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Jude. Welcome.
My name is Jessica, and I have been a proud member of the David Douglas School District since I was 5 years old. I am an elementary music specialist, and it is the best job in the world. I'd never thought that I would have to protect my own children from the violence of their own peers. I'd like to share a phrase that is frequently heard at work. How many people have to get hurt before something different is done? The least restrictive environment is not an environment in which students have to be afraid of getting punched by their peers repeatedly. The least restrictive environment is not one where a single dysregulated student is throwing, tackling, biting, and destroying a classroom. The least restrictive environment does not involve staff members getting black eyes and broken bones. With class sizes over 30, many of whom are language learners or identified as needing SPED services, we absolutely cannot handle one single student screaming all day long, punching adults and children alike, running up and down the halls, and disrupting the learning of hundreds of kids. I'm sure you're thinking, are these kids in SPED? Is it autism and emotional disturbance? What supports are you giving them? Where have you failed to help them? But some of these kids are not yet identified as needing SPED services. But do you know how hard it is to get into a different placement? With our budget being slashed every year, there are times when every single free adult in the building is caring for a student whose emotional outbursts are of a clinical magnitude. We write the referrals. We tried PBIS. It taught the student, if I hit you, I get to play soccer. If I destroy the class, I'll get a snack. We write the referrals and then are told in not so many words that our discipline may be biased. We keep track of the room clears and fights, makes visuals and schedules, calming corners, all to keep them from hurting other people. And then we're told we haven't done it with fidelity. Who's defining fidelity, and why do we have to start all over next year? Because of the parents' poor attendance, or because we didn't implement the plan correctly? Is our district lawyer in the house? Because I'd want to know if one student least restrictive environment is the one that causes 30 other students' environments to be in danger. I want to know how any school can legally meet their mandated sped minutes when we do not have enough adults to put out all of the fires happening in any given day. The resources are being given to 1 or 2 kids. I want to know how a student can physically assault someone every day and come back every day with smiles, stickers, and a snack. I am not blaming the district for the many reasons children end up needing so much support. We can't fix all of society's problems, but we can fix the systems we have in place. We preach about trauma-informed practices, but as teachers and other students who are being traumatized every single day when you allow students to disrupt learning with violence and return every day because your interpretation of the law or because of the systems in place are flawed. We will not treat students with less dignity and care than they deserve. These children need help in a way that the classroom cannot support. I am a teacher caring for 30-plus kids. I am not a mental health professional. We preach restorative justice, but how do we restore justice when it has been toppled like the tables and chairs of our classrooms? Thank you.
Thank you. Colleen Valla. Welcome.
My name is Colleen Valla, and I'm not speaking for myself, but I'm speaking on behalf of one of my colleagues, Nan Dodson, who is currently at home recovering from surgery, and she is wanting to speak to you today about disrupted learning. Dear members of the school board, I am writing to you not only as a dedicated physical education teacher, but as someone who truly believes in the transformative power of education, especially when students begin to believe in themselves. There is nothing more rewarding than seeing the spark in a student's eye when they finally master a skill they once thought impossible. These moments are priceless. However, the growing frequency of extreme disruptive behaviors in our classroom is not just making it difficult to teach, it's making it nearly impossible for many students to learn. Worse still, the nature of these disruptions is escalating in severity. When these behaviors become violent, the classroom is no longer a safe space for students or staff. What's even more troubling is that this environment, marked by chaos and volatility, is depriving countless students of the stable, focused atmosphere they need to learn, grow, and thrive. Many students are unable to concentrate, to feel safe, or to engage meaningfully in their education because of the constant disruption. Meanwhile, the individuals causing this harm are too often not held accountable, nor are there sufficient support systems in place to address the underlying causes of their behavior. This absence of both accountability and intervention is not only unsustainable, it is unjust. Verbal and physical disruptive behaviors are no longer isolated incidents. They have become distressingly routine. Tragically, I speak not only as a witness to this crisis, but as a teacher who has been physically harmed by it. Last spring, during an incident involving a student's aggressive behavior, I sustained a serious knee injury, a torn meniscus, that required surgical intervention. The physical pain was significant, but the emotional and psychological toll has been even greater. This experience has left lasting trauma, diminished my quality of life, and shaken my sense of safety in a space that should be supportive and secure. It is heartbreaking to see dedicated educators and vulnerable students alike being placed in harm's way with little recourse or support. The emotional weight of these experiences is carried home each day by staff and students, slowly eroding morale and faith in our educational system. I must ask, why are these behaviors being allowed to persist unchecked? Why has the safety and well-being of so many been compromised without meaningful action or systemic change? Educators cannot continue to bear the weight of this crisis without support, and our students cannot learn under these conditions. The cost of inaction is far too high. We owe it to every student, every educator, and every member of our school communities to provide an environment where learning is possible, where safety is prioritized, and where all individuals are treated with the respect and care they deserve. I take great pride in what I do. I want to continue to inspire students to believe in themselves and achieve things they never thought possible. But we cannot do that when our classrooms are unsafe and our teachers are unsupported. Thank you for your time. Respectfully, Non Dodson from Lincoln Park.
Thank you. Okay. Next, we'll welcome Alice Eberharder from DDA.
Good evening. My name is Alice Eberharder. I'm the president of the David Douglas Education Association. First, I want to echo the respect and condolences that so many of you have expressed for Hua Win, and my appreciation for her commitment and service to our district. I also, as you've heard from many DDA members this evening, there's a lot to be said about the topic of disrupted learning. This is happening at all levels. I'm including MECP in our early childhood, all the way through our oldest students. But as you heard, a lot of elementary testimony tonight as well. I also want to echo some of what our members have said about the ripple effect of this in terms of staff morale, student morale, feeling safe in a space that we want to be a safe haven for all of our students. That gets eroded and chipped away, and it takes longer to rebuild that than it does to lose it. I know one thing that we are partnering with you all on is the Continuum of Services Task Force, which came out of our last bargain, and that is moving forward. I know I've spoken about it to you before, but we're trying to find, through research and investigation, a lot of creative solutions. Everything from something small that doesn't cost any money, what can we try tomorrow, to things that take a lot of funding, new programs, new buildings, the whole range. What are all the things that we can come up with to try? What might work here? And I'm proud and glad that we're doing that work, and it feels like the first, not the first, I should say. I know a lot of work has been done on this topic, and it feels like a small step on a very long path. I also want to just note, and I think again, this will be an echo of what others have said, that it can feel like a real question of what are we teaching our students when this is the environment that they're in every day? Are we teaching them accountability? Are we teaching them respect for their peers? Are we teaching them how to be part of a community? Even though that is our best effort, if this is what they're seeing and feeling and experiencing every day, is that, can they really learn those lessons? I don't know the answer to that. It really deeply worries me. And I know it is an issue that is bigger than any one teacher's classroom or any one educator's caseload. I'm really aware that we are operating with some limitations in terms of state and federal law, in terms of policy, around very real concerns like disproportionate discipline. That is real, and I really respect it. And trying to figure out, how do we keep moving forward? What are the next steps? With all that in mind, my ask for you all tonight is have our back. Our administrators and our teachers need to know that you are behind them, that you believe them, and that you want and are willing to take meaningful action to address these issues in our school and our community. Thank you for hearing me tonight.
Thank you. Next on the agenda is OSEA. Darla Black has prepared a written statement. She cannot be here tonight, so I just want to make sure that everyone on the board makes sure to see that it's linked in to our documentation, and it is also in regards to staff safety and student support. So. Okay. Okay, so up next we have invited public input from Menlo Park. Welcome.
Hi, I'm Sarah Phillips from Menlo Park.
And I'm Nick Erickson from Menlo Park.
And our equity chairs have not quite made it, so we're going to just jump in for them.
Welcome. Sorry, we're a little early.
I'm in the middle, yeah. Hi, I'm Susie Bang. I'm one of the equity chairs at Menlo Park. Normally a Title I reading teacher.
And so we had the honor of planning for our Indigenous Peoples Day presentation for our staff and students.
So who is this day representative, or who are we celebrating? So Indigenous Peoples Day aims to celebrate and honor the past, present, and futures of Native peoples throughout the United States, and acknowledges the legacy of colonialism, which has devastated Indigenous communities historically and continues to negatively impact them today.
So what is it? The holiday recognizes the legacy and impact of colonialism on Native communities, and it also celebrates the cultures, contributions, and resiliency of contemporary Native peoples. As of 2021, Indigenous Peoples Day is officially recognized as a national holiday. This day allows Native people and their perspectives to be centered and celebrated.
So as part of our presentation, we wanted to dig in and research where families and staff and students could celebrate Indigenous Peoples Day. So we have an Indigenous Peoples Day celebration at Barbie's Village on October 13th. And at the Portland Indigenous Marketplace on October 11th through 12th at the Oregon Convention Center is a celebration. And then another celebration on October 12th at Clackamas Community College.
And the reason why we celebrate is that there are 574 federally recognized tribes in the United States. Each tribe has their own culture, and tribes all across the nation share deep connections to their history and ancestors.
We linked a few different resources that staff, students, and families can access to learn more about Indigenous Peoples Days and different histories and cultures and celebrations.
We also just want to mention that we try to honor our students who come from various tribes at our school, and in our cafeteria we have flags from the different countries that our students represent, and we this year had 2 different students bring in their tribal flags for us to honor them as well, and the pride that they brought with them. One student brought it to back to school night before school even started and was like, "Here's my flag, please hang it." And so just helping all of our students see that whether they're from another country or a tribe, everybody's welcome at our school, and we want everybody to feel like they're honored and celebrated. And so this day is really important to us to make sure that our Native students feel that they're valued, seen, and heard in our classrooms.
Thank you very much. Lovely. All right. Up next, we have 2 proclamations. We have Hispanic Latinx Heritage Proclamation, and we also have Indigenous Peoples Day Resolution. So what we normally do, and we'll do tonight, is we'll take turns reading through the 2 proclamations, beginning with Hispanic Latinx Heritage. Director Ender, would you start?
David Douglas School District proclaiming the celebration of National Hispanic Latinx Heritage Month. Whereas the Latinx heritage of the United States extends historically over 5 centuries and has been a consistent and vital influence in our country's growth and prosperity. And
Whereas Latinx culture is tied to Iberian ancestry, and our culture recognizes the Latinxes are multiracial and multicultural who can trace their historical roots to indigenous and African ancestry. And
whereas Latinx in Oregon are a diverse mix of first-generation immigrants and long-time residents, the definition of Latinx is tied to cultures across 24 countries in Latin America and the Caribbean, including the United States, Mexico, Puerto Rico, the Dominican Republic, Cuba, Guatemala, Belize, El Salvador, Costa Rica, Honduras, Nicaragua, Panama, Colombia, Peru, Ecuador, Paraguay, Uruguay, Brazil, Venezuela, Argentina, Bolivia, Chile, and Spain, or España. They reflect an array of distinct and vibrant cultures that have enriched our community in valuable ways. And
whereas Hispanic Heritage Month was started as a Heritage Week in 1968 and begins on September 15th, which is the anniversary of the independence of 5 Latin American countries, Costa Rica, El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, and Nicaragua. And
whereas Latinx have supported Portland's economy with many contributions and leadership in the field of commerce, science, technology, public service, health, arts, and more. Today, their purchasing power in Portland is nearly $4 billion. And
whereas despite these contributions in leadership, Hispanic and Latinx communities are still less likely to work in managerial or professional occupations, have a median household income that is significantly lower than non-Hispanic whites, and more than 20% reported living at the poverty level in 2015. And
whereas Hispanic people have the highest medical uninsured rates of any racial or ethnic group within the U.S., which is attributed to linguistic and cultural barriers and a lack of access to preventative care. And
whereas racially motivated discrimination and harassment is at a local and national high, with a spike in hate crimes reported against the Latinx community. And
whereas 71% of Hispanic Latinx students in David Douglas School District High School self-reported that they were bullied last year due to how I look. And
whereas we recognize that given hardships and disparities faced by the Latinx community, this proclamation is only a small step of the many that we need to take to be truly inclusive and supportive of our Latinx students and their families. And
whereas 30.6% or 2,655 enrolled students are Hispanics and or Latina, and the Hispanic Latina students population has grown 4.6% of the total 30.6% of the total student population from 1996 to 2025. Students who self-identified as Hispanic also identified as American Indian, Alaska Native, Asian, Black, Pacific Islander, white, or multiracial. And
whereas 66.5% of Latinx students in the 2023-2024 four-year cohort graduated, of which, when disaggregated by sex, 77.3% of self-identified Latinx female students graduated and 58.3% of self-identified Latino males students graduated. And
whereas 23.5% of the ASB student leadership has identified as Latinx. And
whereas the Latinx Student Union organizes and promotes student success for Latinx students. And
whereas 12.32% of district leadership, supervisors, managers, principals has self-identified as Latinx. And
whereas as of September 2025, David Douglas School District has 207 employees who identified as Hispanic Latinx. And
whereas Spanish is the second most commonly spoken home language in the district with 922 Spanish-speaking homes. And
whereas in June 2019, David Douglas High School hosted its first Spanish language graduation, and during the event, students shared multilingual poetry and songs that celebrated diverse Hispanic and Latina cultures. And
whereas our Hispanic and Latinx families lead and actively participate in groups across the school campuses, including intercambio groups at several elementary schools, Latino parent groups across the district, culturally specific family nights, and more. And
whereas the David Douglas School District is committed to and advocates for equal educational, professional, and social opportunities for Latinx students. And
whereas the strategic hiring plan outlines specific strategies to increase staff of color, including a Grow Your Own program with 33 staff of color enrolled. And
Whereas the David Douglas School District has adopted educational equity policy and an equal educational opportunity policy that states our commitment to closing the achievement gap for Latinx students and creating an educational environment where all students can benefit equally from the educational programs offered. And
Whereas the Oregon State Legislature passed a $2 billion investment, the Student Success Act, into Oregon's K-12 schools, $1 million specifically for the Latinx Student Success statewide plan. And
Whereas the district is working towards eliminating the racial predictability and disproportionality of all aspects of education and articulated action steps in the adopted district strategic plan and district equity plan. And
whereas the district collaborates and partners with community-based organizations like Latino Network, El Programa Hispano, to form strong relationships in a culturally appropriate way and to provide the space for feedback and guidance to district leaders on improving outcomes and opportunities for Latina students and families in the district.
Now, therefore, be it resolved that the David Douglas School Board of Directors do hereby proclaim September 15th through October 15th to be Latinx Heritage Month, in recognition and celebration of the many contributions of Latinx to the country and our community. And be it further resolved that the David Douglas School Board of Directors strongly encourages staff and community to observe, recognize, and celebrate the culture, heritage, and contributions of Latinx to our country, our state, our cities, and our schools.
And just as a note, some of you may have caught that I wasn't using Latinx. There are varying schools of thoughts of Latinx versus Latine. I personally am on one school of thought, as you could see, but everyone thinks it's a different thing. A lot of Spanish speakers that don't speak English really dislike Latinx because you can't say it very easily in Spanish. But either way, it's good. Thanks.
Now we will move on to the Indigenous Peoples Day resolution. Director Inder, can you start with this one too?
David Douglas School District Indigenous Peoples Day resolution. Whereas the David Douglas School Board of Education Board recognizes that the indigenous peoples of the land that would later become known as the Americas have occupied these lands since time immemorial, and
whereas the board values the many contributions made to our community through Indigenous peoples' knowledge, labor, technology, science, philosophy, arts, and the deep cultural contribution that has substantially shaped our district, and
whereas the board has established that each student is to be celebrated and appreciated for the distinct and vibrant contributions made by sharing cultures, language, ideas, beliefs, and values within a school community, and
whereas the board recognizes that the David Douglas School District is built upon the homelands and villages and traditional use areas of the Multnomah and Clackamas Chinookan of this region, without whom the building of this district would not be possible, and
whereas the district has an adopted equity policy that states our commitment to closing the achievement gap for Indigenous peoples and creating an educational environment where all students can benefit equally from the educational programs offered, and
whereas the district is working towards eliminating the racial predictability and disproportionality on all aspects of education and articulated action steps in the adopted district strategic plan and district equity plan, and
whereas the idea of Indigenous Peoples Day was first proposed in 1977 by a delegation of Native nations to United Nations, and
whereas the Oregon American Indian Alaska Native State Plan mandates that the public schools of our district teach about the history, culture, contemporary lives, and governments of the indigenous peoples of the Americas, with special emphasis on those from Oregon and across the Pacific Northwest.
now, therefore, be it further resolved that every second Monday of October will be Indigenous Peoples Day in the David Douglas School District.
be it further resolved that the district shall encourage staff to utilize the second Monday in October as an opportunity to reflect upon the ongoing struggles of Indigenous peoples of this land, to celebrate the thriving cultures and the values of Indigenous peoples of our region, and to stand in solidarity with Indigenous peoples elsewhere.
be it further resolved that the district calendars and websites shall reference the second Monday of October as Indigenous Peoples Day. Be it further resolved that the board strongly encourages our staff and community to observe, recognize, and celebrate the culture, heritage, and contributions of Native Americans to our country, our state, our cities, and our schools. Thank you. Okay, we are a little ahead of schedule. Next, we have elevating student and family voice. We can.
We are ready.
Okay.
Yep. Thank you for being here, Oscar. Sandy, can you turn on the light?
Welcome.
Good evening. Thank you for having me here. They asked me to come here to help kick off this video that we're going to watch, and then I'll just say a few words afterwards.
It is a very fearful time for me, my community, and my church community. We are fearing who might be taken next and living in the unknown, worrying who is going to take care of us next, worrying if I have a voice, like if it matters what we say. And sometimes it is honestly scary seeing law enforcement in general, not knowing if we can trust them or what their intentions are. But we need to still come together and form unity and allyship.
It is heartbreaking and scary for my parents. I never know if it is the last time I'm going to see them because of the ice raids.
Every day, as I have to leave for work, my daughter tells me to be careful. My children are living with the constant fear of something happening to me.
I don't like having to look over my shoulder all the time. Even if I have papers because I look a certain way, I now feel like I have to be careful.
The mother of one of my students was deported. The family had to decide whether to stay or leave with mom. My student was only 15. Ultimately, they decided to follow their mom. They were both devastated.
Familia, family, is one of the bedrocks of the Latino Hispanic community.
I came to the United States 2 years ago. We arrived in the state of Oregon. I had not seen my mom in nearly 2 years. I arrived where my mom was and we hugged each other. I'm very happy to be here with my mom.
Maintaining Spanish and other indigenous languages is a critical component of the Latino Hispanic community. Being bilingual allows us to build bridges and leverage the strengths of our heritage.
Growing up, I didn't speak Spanish regularly, but taking Spanish classes in high school gave me the chance to reclaim a part of my identity and reconnect with my roots. Now I can proudly say that I am bilingual.
Arts, food, and celebration are powerful tools for resilience, creating a sense of community, preserving heritage, and providing an outlet for expression.
I'm proud of my family and the food we eat.
I like how my family on special days can dance, dance, dance. My mama is a great dancer.
When I am feeling down, I like to listen to Latin music. It is a source of my strength, identity, and community.
One of the things that makes me happy is when I help my mom make tamales.
My culture is the music I sing, the food that I eat, and the lens with which I see everyday life. Recognizing my culture lets the memories, sacrifices, and joy of my ancestors live on through me and those I can share it with. My culture lets me love life deeper and lets me understand that everyone has a story and a way of life to be celebrated.
Thank you to the David Douglas School District for putting this on, and this team for contributing to this. It was really important for me to have something like this just to kind of close out Hispanic Heritage Month. We see this in the schools every single day, families just being concerned of their attendance and with the ICE raids, and being in certain groups where I'm hearing, and helping support our community, our David Douglas community. I just recently volunteered myself to support and kind of identify to see if there were some mysterious van, mysterious people with masks. It turned out not to be true, but I was happy to contribute and help out and support and verify that there wasn't anything like that happening in our school district. Again, as we close out this Hispanic Heritage Month, it's not over, right? The celebration continues for me, and to be able to keep motivating the students to come here. I'm not seeing an attendance issue right now at my school, but I do know that one of the families that was in our school district had to leave the school district because of housing concerns or just lack thereof, and had to move to a different school district where they have more services. It makes me think of, why don't we have those kind of organizations here, or more of those, to house people that have housing concerns? And they're being pushed out to different school districts where they're able to support them a little bit better than they are here. And again, thank you for the time. I just wanted to share that with you.
Thank you. Okay. Next on the agenda is the data report for math and literacy.
Okay, we're going to have members of our curriculum and instruction and now assessment team come up and join us. Okay. Thank you. Okay, and Sandy, if you could go to the next slide. And actually, before we get started, I'm going to let the team introduce themselves. And I just want to appreciate them in advance that they're here. It's a big professional learning day for us tomorrow, and they're all either facilitating, coordinating, or leading PD. So thank you. I'll let you introduce yourselves.
Happy to be here. My name is Rochelle Zimmerman. I'm our math specialist, and I'll be talking about math tonight.
I'm Francesca Altman. I'm our K-12 language arts specialist.
And Cameron Cross, Reading Intervention, TOSA, K-12.
Okay, so we're going to start talking about some data, but I really wanted to frame this presentation recently. Acronym you're going to hear is OSAS. It's really big in our world, Oregon State Assessment System. And recently those scores were published. If you're aware, in the Oregonian, it's a yearly test that students take. Starting in grade 3 in math and English language arts. And so we're going to touch on that lightly, but then we're going to move into some more actionable data that more so drives our day-to-day planning and immediate steps we could take. So just want to frame the work in this slide right here when we talk about achievement. As part of the assessment being moved to curriculum instruction, I was able to attend some webinars with the Oregon Department of Education, and I really appreciated the explanation of this slide, because when you see the scores in the Oregonian or on the news, when they say a percentage, they're looking at the students who achieved a level 3 or a level 4. Only. So, but none of us really know, what does that mean, a level 3 or 4. So this really talks about the grade level performance with increasing complexity. So at a level 3, students consistently demonstrate proficient grade level knowledge and skills with a broad range of complexity. When you get to 4, they consistently demonstrate advanced grade level knowledge and skills with deep understanding and a full range of complexity. But I want to point out, I think this is super important, when you look at level 2, students still demonstrate foundational grade level knowledge and skills with a limited range of complexity. So there's some myths that go along, and you can see when we get to a level 1, students do not consistently demonstrate grade level knowledge or skills. So next slide, please, Sandy. Why is this important? Because there's some myths going around. When we just look at those percentages, that the first one there on the left, students who are not proficient on Oregon's 3rd grade English language arts test can't read. That is a myth. The fact is that 3rd grade ELA tests assess reading, comprehension, writing, research, and listening at grade level. Decoding, phonemic awareness, and vocabulary are prerequisite skills. So you might see students getting that grade level, but it doesn't mean they're non-readers. They still bring a lot to those scores. When we talk about math, the myth is students who are not proficient on Oregon's 5th grade mathematics test can't do math.
The fact is that the 5th grade math test assesses problem solving, mathematical reasoning, conceptual understanding, and application of skills at grade level, basic arithmetic, operations, number sense, and understanding of fundamental geometric shapes are the prerequisite skills. So we wanted to frame that as we look at how we did this year. So next slide, Sandy. So these are our Oregon State Assessment System achievement scores for 24-25. Again, this is a one-time test, so we wanted to also include the level 2 just to frame this for you and give you a little bit more information. So you could see each of the grade levels that it is assessed. It's only once in high school. And then the percentage of 3s and 4s and the level 2s and what it would be like if you combine levels 2 and 4 together. So you can see that for math and English language arts. So this test, like I said, is a one-time test, and it is not meant to drive daily instruction for teachers. It is traditionally given in the spring. There's a long window of testing because there's a lot of tests to take. What it helps us do is look at systems. We use it to look at systems, we use it to look at patterns or trends, but it does not drive day-to-day instruction for students. One of the things that we will be doing is we're working on the letter. There is a letter required by law that needs to go home to all the parents with your students' scores. So we're working on changing that a little bit. There's some language updates that we hope to make, so we are working on getting those out to families so you can see how your student did. So with that, I'm going to turn it over, though, to Rochelle to talk about our math, like I said, the assessments that we use to drive our day-to-day planning, and give us a little bit more information about students and next steps to take.
Awesome, thanks. I know we have some new board members, so I wanted to start with just kind of a reminder, what is our assessment we're going to talk about, since Brooke just kind of went over OSAS, and that's not our actionable data set for our year kind of over the year planning. So we use iReady Diagnostic. It's part of our core curriculum in K-8, and it is an adaptive assessment. That just means that it responds to how students are interacting with each test item, and it decides to give them a challenging one or maybe a little more of a prerequisite one, and it levels across. This is really helpful because it shows us a way of kind of a snapshot. What strengths are the students showing and what areas are in need of some growth and some refinement. And we tend to use the diagnostic as a kind of a snapshot because we do it 3 times a year. So we're constantly seeing, okay, how are students growing across the year? Next slide. We're going to look a little bit now, and I want to take a moment because we're going to use this type of data graphic a few times, both for math and for ELA. So I want to set us up for kind of reading this graphic. At the top, that first display is our beginning of year, fall last year. And at the bottom, you'll see our end of year for spring last year. We normally do this presentation in June, but we got postponed, and so we're excited to bring it to you today. So I wanted to point to you, last year, the beginning of the year, I'm going to count from yellow all the way up to green because that's where we expect students to start the year. We see that label yellow and it says 1 grade level below, which kind of doesn't sound good, but I want you to think about if you're newly starting in 1st grade for this data set, we're in K through 2 up there, I should have a good understanding of kindergarten skills, an understanding, so I should be proficient at 1 grade level below what I currently am. So if I'm a new 1st grader, I hope that all my kindergarten content is on dial up here. So yellow is expected at the beginning of the year, and green is extra cherry on top. So 72% were showing ready and primed for grade level. By the end of the year, we had 40% of our students on the diagnostic demonstrating grade level understanding, and an additional 49% more that I would say are very much near full level of proficiency. So I'm kind of counting all that yellow in addition up to our green. Next slide. This graphic is the same organization, but now we're looking at grades 3 through 5 as a cluster. And again, beginning of year to end of year. And I'm going to ask us to think about it kind of in the same way with a little extra nugget of information. So last year, grades 3 through 5, 45% of our students were where we'd expect them to be at the beginning of the year, yellow to green. By the end of the year, we had 32% of students who had met or achieved grade level expectations on the diagnostic they were demonstrating, and an additional 33% who are, again, very near their grade level expected zone. And I want to mention that as we move from the K2 band to the grade 3 through 5 band, there is a significant jump or level up, you could call it, in math standards. Not to say that students can't do grades 3 through 5 math, but saying that there are some pretty big cognitive connections that we're asking kids to grapple with. And I would just say that this tends to be where we start to see a lot more students need different learning paths in order to achieve understanding. In addition, I want to make a mention that we had a reduction in our newest category. So we have this dark red category we're seeing there, which is saying students are performing or demonstrating 3 or more grade levels below their chronological grade. And we reduced that, teachers reduced that by 11% by the end of the year. We need to watch that red zone as much as we watch the green zone in my graph, because ultimately we want students who are farthest from grade level getting closer and closer to grade level year over year. And we know that it doesn't happen all in one 180-day school year. Next slide. And now we're looking at grades 6 through 8. Again, beginning of the year, we had 39% of our 6 through 8 grade students last year coming into the year where we'd expect them. And then by the end of the year, 28% of them were at grade level from this band of 6 through 8 kids, with 24 additional percent more who were very near grade level expectations. And again, I want to make a call out from 47% to 35% in our furthest from grade level. That's a drop in 12%. So we've shifted additional students further up in their demonstration or proficiency shown on the diagnostic. Next slide. Now, we wanted to also bring you a little bit of like, well, what's this looking like this year? And how do we start talking about what's been happening over time? And so I know it's a new graphic, but again, we're going to see these with ELA as well. So on the left, you've got grades 1 and 2. I didn't include kindergarten because this year we actually haven't taken the kinder diagnostic yet. They're delayed. As you might imagine, they're learning a lot of things in kindergarten. And so we wait on the computer assessment until later in October. So on the far left, 23-24 is the first year that we even had an iReady diagnostic. We'd never had a test like this before. And we can see the beginning of year near grade level expectations or above, and what percentage that has looked like over time. So I would say on grades 1 and 2, it's been pretty steady. We haven't taken a significant dip, which sometimes happens with newly implemented programs. We also have seen a little bit of an increase, but it's mainly plateauing at grades 1 and 2 from what we can see right now. If we jump over to grades 3 through 5, again, 41% of our students in that band had near or above expectations in 23-24, and that's jumped now to 44%, which is an increase of 3% over a 2-year span, right? Thinking our kids have only really been in school 2 years, and they just now took their 3rd diagnostic here in fall. And next slide is going to be our middle school, and here we are, 38% again, and then we've got another increase in 3% from just last year to this year. And so when I look at some of these trends, I think overall I'm seeing we're in the right spot, we're working on good things, and we're continuing to make progress year over year. I would, of course, love to see some bigger spikes. That would be silly of me to not say that. And yet, I also understand that good growth takes time. And the next slide kind of brings to some of the things that we've been working on that I'm excited to see the impacts of them as we move through this year, our 3rd year with this program, this curriculum, and this assessment. Starting with system-wide, we are working together, Francesca, myself, and the whole department on increasing and being more systematic in how we support our schools that are receiving targeted status in terms of their achievement year over year. At the K-5 level, I've had a stellar group of teachers who have dedicated many hours to enhancing the curricular materials to support our many multilingual learner students. and those receiving special education. We've got a stronger, I would say, infusement of vocabulary and math discourse supports. We also newly initiated a math core review process. So I talked about that assessment happens 3 times a year. We never have really talked about math data 3 times a year. And so that was something that the elementary administrators had really advocated for, and I'm excited to see that process refine over this year. And then at the middle school, there is a new program that iReady has put out within our middle school. It's iReady Pro. It's like the middle school version. What you should know about it is that it ensures that students are able to capture core essential lessons or skills from their previous grades where they might have had some gaps. And instead of having to work through an entire grade level's stretch of content, iReady has gone through and kind of extracted and synthesized the big items to help students make acceleration a little faster, which is exciting. We also are going to be leaning into some disciplinary literacy at the 6 through 8 level, which just means we're helping our teachers and thus our students with being able to engage with mathematical tasks, academic vocabulary, and that partnership is trying to be intentional across the school. So we're not doing different things in different content areas. Let's all unify on some really strong strategies. That is my spiel for you. I am supposed to pause and let you ask some questions, I think, before I hand it over to Francesca and Cameron.
Thank you very much. Questions? Comments? Oh, please, go. Yeah.
Oh, how could I forget? I mean, I could have gone after questions. It still can. But there's a math carnival. I know we've talked a little bit about it at the board workshop. But for everyone who is here or listening at home, please mark a calendar. I'd love to see you. There's going to be mascots, apparently. So, I mean, the fun just keeps growing. I hope that you're able to come out in the evening on October 24th. And play some math games, eat some fun food, and enjoy doing math in a way that is collaborative and fun.
Sandy, can you go to the previous slide real quick, even though this is a very exciting slide? I just want to point out, when you look at that K5 side, when it says that HQIM acronym, which is something near and dear to us, is high quality instructional materials. And I want to thank the board. That's where you come in, because you approve the purchase of these programs that we're using to bring consistency, coherence across our entire district. So I want to thank you, but I want to make sure you knew what that acronym meant.
It's a little bit of a, I'm trying to think about how to ask this, but if you go to the slides 8 and 9, I'm hoping to get ask a little bit of a question. So you go from 33% beginning of year at 3 or more grade level, and then the next slide, this jumps to 47. So you said a little bit about like there's additional grade level standards, but what do you see as like the divide between, I would hope that would be a going down number versus going up, and you see it going up across all grade bands.
Yeah.
Can you talk more to that?
Yeah, for sure. So if you actually can go to the grade 3 through 5 slide for just a second. So the next slide, there we go. So I think what's challenging about this assessment in data reporting is that it's called criterion reference, right? So like as you are a student, you move into the next grade level, you might have been one particular color, yellow, for example, this year. But then when you move into your next grade level, you become light red or dark red, depending on what criterion you were in your previous year. And so I think there's going to be some element of, at the beginning of every year, we are going to see, ideally, the majority in the yellow. That's our goal every year at the beginning, is to have a big chunk of yellow. And as we continue, I think, to refine our instructional practices, as we continue to refine like using our high quality instructional materials and leveraging the pieces that are bringing the most student learning, my hope is that yellow will continue to grow larger and the red will shrink, but it won't ever be gone at the beginning of the year. I mean, I think we know that there is a vibrancy of students in our classrooms, and we also need to keep in mind that an assessment never measures the full depth of any student who takes any assessment. But that would be my anchoring thought is, yes, the criterion changes. So as I move up into a grade level, I might have exited third grade as a yellow, but when I enter in fourth grade, I might be entering as red. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I'm just more trying to understand why it's an increasing number. Like, I get what you're saying, that there's this transition back and forth across, but why would the red continue to become a bigger proportion as the student progresses through? Because if you were accelerating the growth, you would, in my mind, I would expect to see that as a flipped, the bands being in the opposite direction.
Yeah,
band.
I do definitely hear what you're saying there. I also think that we're looking at last year's data, which is our second year of implementation with new curriculum and new materials and a new assessment. And then we're seeing, especially as we go to 6th through 8th grade, which is the next graphic where the red is the largest out of all of them, those students have been the least interactive with our instructional materials. And so if we believe that our high quality instructional materials are going to be a pivotal tool to help kids reach the depth and the rigor of the grade level content, then my hope would be the longer students have experience with and interaction with that grade level rigor, then again, that yellow or the decrease in red will happen, but it's going to be over time, especially when we think about our friends who are closest to the end of their K-8 journey.
Thank you. Any other questions for math? No?
I know we're talking about the high school, but I did notice on that fourth slide, like 11th grade math proficiency went all the way down to 36, where it been hovering around the 50s and the 40s, and then it just dips, right?
High school OSAS is a definite challenge point, and I think there's so much to unpack there. I'd love to come back on that. I think the big thing that stands out in my mind for OSAS at the high school level is most students are taking it their junior year. That's the expectation, meaning they have not interacted with an OSAS style assessment since 8th grade, if they were in our school district, Oregon student. In addition, this is speaking as a former high school teacher, we used to have some requirements from the state that the OSAS could be used as a essential skills requirement, essentially like saying, okay, I have demonstrated the proficiency that is essential for my graduation, and that has been on pause since I believe COVID. I was tempted to even say maybe the year before, but it's been on pause for a while. So I would actually say, speaking as a teacher, like, help us, please. If we want that OSAS test to be something that we're utilizing as a district and as a important accountability measure, then we have to also bring that importance to our students, to our teachers, to our community, because I think taking an assessment as a junior can probably feel like a hoop that I have to hop through, and not an intentional, purposeful assessment that benefits my community and benefits me as a student to secure my diploma or to access a pathway beyond high school. And so I don't want it to be a barrier, but I do want it to have elevated importance, like I think it once did, and it has not returned.
I realize this is not my part of the presentation, but just to add on to that, part of our conversation recently has also been around participation in OSAS. We have a dismally low participation rate, and it's statewide, and we see that most significantly at high school. And I think really below 95% participation, which is the federal expectation, that data becomes less and less reliable because it's not representative of all students. And so one of the things that's come up, I know, in our department conversations is how do we also build back up participation, because we have a lot more students opting out. And that happens most significantly at high school because that's when the students are starting to advocate for opting out for themselves. And so, our younger grades, we might have parents or guardians opt students out, but in high school, they're able to push for that a little bit more themselves too. So we see that opt-out rate a lot higher. So I know we've talked about it also being an education piece for our community as well, of why does this test matter? And it can be tricky, as Rochelle has shared, but also what does it mean for our district, for the way that we're viewed in the community, for increasing enrollment. We want community members to want to bring their kids to David Douglas, and for better or for worse, the ways that schools are judged, typically on real estate apps or on websites, is often based on standardized test scores. And so it's tricky because depending on who the constituent is, the value of that test might look different. But I know it's something we're really grappling with as a department in discussion as well.
And with that, I guess my question would be, do we keep track at all about which kids are opting out? Or are the kids that would make our scores look even worse or better? Like, are really high achieving math kids in AP classes are like, I don't need to take this test and opting out? Or is it the kids that really struggle? They're like, I'm not taking a test in math. I hate math. So they're opting out.
I'm going to have to defer that question to someone else. I don't know. I'm so sorry.
It might be interesting to see that.
We will do that this year. Yes.
I think if I may, I hear Chair Franklin saying the red is getting bigger, and I agree. Is there, with the iReady data that is available, is there a way to use that to compare to see, is the red getting bigger, or are we just, like you said, these are just students we haven't interacted with as much with the new curriculum, or are we, I'm trying to think, are we gathering metrics differently that might be showing data different than reality, like you were saying?
Yeah, I think you're asking a really good question. One of the things that I like to be able to utilize on the yearly basis, and what our teachers find to be the most helpful, and I'd say even our administrators, by the time we get to the mid-year diagnostic, and then again at the end of the year, we have this other report, which shows us how much our students growing, right? That helps us to see how much is that red shrinking, how far are we moving students from any, placement further along, because we want everyone to be making progress. And so I'd love to come back. We'll have that data in January. And so I'm wondering maybe a February timeline would be wonderful to kind of give you a little sneak preview as to what our growth is looking like. And then I can speak more authentically to what's happening this year. And yes, we've seen our data in the red larger for the last 2 years. So let's see how it's going in year 3. And what are some moves that we're finding are helpful and successful in pushing that growth?
And deferring to you as the expert and boots on the ground almost, why do you think there aren't more yellow?
At the beginning of the year or anywhere?
Any point. Anywhere. Why isn't there more? Why don't we have more yellow? Like, is it the just the testing or the diagnosticing, or?
I wish there was one variable, but if I had to put a couple on the table, I think our diagnostic assessment is a math assessment with some literacy comprehension. It also factors in, I need to be able to read and comprehend, or be able to listen and comprehend what the task is asking. So I think that layers in. I also think that our population of students who don't speak English as a first language, that also factors into how I'm comprehending, especially if mathematics is done differently where I come from, and now I'm being given an assessment. It's not asking it the same way. So I think there's some elements that. And then I also think that we need to be really cautious about any of the assessments that we use. I said this a little earlier, I think an assessment is a good tool, but it doesn't capture the full depth of knowledge of all of our students. And I would propose that if I have been a student who has historically had experiences in math that have been negative or demoralizing, am I going to be giving this assessment on a computer my best effort, go full force, full confidence, I can do it? And I think we probably all can generalize. Probably I'm not going to give this test my best if I've had a lot of experiences that have been negative. And so I think those are the big 3 that I think come up on the table for me.
Thank you.
just real quick too, I do want to highlight Cameron has a really great dashboard that he's made, and you can, especially when you have later in the year data, you can compare beginning of year kind of time points with the pathways of progress that Rochelle is pointing to. So flag for that.
Going to my teacher voice. Yeah, that one's all literacy on that one, but on the dashboard, yeah. So as you're looking at that, we can look into, we've kept the math within the iReady because it had all the pieces that we wanted in there, but if it's something that we want to move forward with creating our external dashboard, our own dashboard outside of iReady, we could even break it down further on that, so you can take a look at that. I just wanted to clarify that.
So I know that when we get we go through an awesome process to get new curriculum, and it often involves the students. And I guess I'm bringing some social science into it. Have we gone back then and sort of assessed with the students how they feel about this test? I happen to know one that likes to tank it so they can take the easy questions, and another one that gets really frustrated if the questions start getting easy. So how are they feeling about it? Like, is it helpful for them? I wonder if we've thought about that.
Yeah, I really appreciate you bringing like the students and how they're interacting with the assessment. What I can say from some teacher testimonials is that when the teachers are also kind of talking up the assessment and praising students in what its purpose is and how you as a student are kind of showing the computer what you know, and it's okay to not know everything, and it's okay to show things that you're not quite sure of yet, students tend to have a much better perception of the assessment. And I think some of our teachers who maybe are not used to having some of those data side conversations, that might not be the same kind of environment or culture around the assessment. And so I think you're right. We do need to continue to support our educators so that they can support the assessment in a way that focuses on growth over time rather than show the computer what you know and move on.
I have a question that might not be a smart one. I'm new. Is there much research on not testing on electronics and benefits or not benefits of, and options for students to not use this device for the assessments?
Yeah, good question. I don't know the research, but I would be happy to dig in. I do know that across our state, we do utilize a digital assessment platform, OSAS, as Brooke just mentioned. And so I think there's kind of a tension between assessments on more of that kind of daily classroom level, paper, pencil, grappling with manipulatives, being able to see student thinking. And then there's this assessment that helps us to see a broad snapshot at once and gathering that data in a way that is timely to be able to make some big grade 3 decisions or school-wide decisions. The logistics of doing that on paper and pencil for those big data inspections is really complicated. I was born in the 1900s, but I went to school in the 2000s. So I'm not sure. Maybe there is a way, but I don't know of a way that we can do that at this level.
I think too, being that the assessment is adaptive and it can give us more student information on what they can do. Sometimes when we just have a paper or pencil, we can see what they can't do. But because of the adaptive nature, as you said, they can get harder questions or easier questions based on how they're performing. We can actually see what they know and where they're excelling, which is where then we can start planning instruction.
I think I am going to hand it over to ELA. And if you have any more math questions, I know Alethea is our DO liaison, which we're really excited about having this year. But please feel free, any of you, you're always welcome to stop by. If we're there, we'll talk. If we're not, leave a little note and we'll get back to you.
All right, so we're going to go over the literacy side. We're going to talk about data from the ALO, the Acadience Learning Online. Some of you know it as DIBELS, and it's an assessment that helps us assess the skills that are needed to be a reader at grade level. Some of the assessments cover things such as the first sound fluency, phoneme segmentation, nonsense word, and oral reading fluency. And the data we're going to go over is a composite score, which includes, depending on your grade, whichever assessments the students took. And those kind of change over the course of a year. But tonight's data is going to be composite. And we're going to look very similar to what Rochelle did. Francine's going to be going, Francine. So funny, I've been saying that in my head all day today and said, don't say Francine. I said, Francesca. I don't know why I said Francine. Francesca. Looking at beginning of year to end of year, and then look at a cross-sectional of that BOY beginning of year over the last 4 years. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Francesca.
I usually get Florence, so this is a new one for me. As Cameron shared, one of the metrics that we'll look at is this Acadience or ALO data. And I want to orient you to it a little bit because while the graphs look very similar to math, there's a few nuances to know that are different about this test and what it measures and what its purpose is. So Acadience, as Cameron mentioned, is really a screening assessment. Its ultimate purpose is to tell us who do we need to take a closer look at, who has a higher likelihood of struggling with reading and performing at grade level with general classroom grade level instruction. And so the purpose of it is a bit different, and the title on this slide is actually a bit of a misnomer because we're really looking not so much at achievement, but where do our students screen on this overall assessment that tells us about their readiness for grappling with some of those more complex grade level skills. So one other point that I want to mention as we look up here, because obviously I think any of us can look at that graph and know from the most basic data literacy standpoint, we wish more of those percentages were on the right. And a few things to know about that is that one of the keys here is that the red portion on these graphs, and especially once we get to 3 through 5, it represents a really wide range. So I know you've heard some about like the high school talking about grading policies and things like that, and how odd, I know I didn't think about it until I was older, that an F represented more than 50% of the possible grade percentage you could get. And so I want to think about this a little bit similarly in that red zone or landing in the red is a really wide range. And so sometimes when we look at a test like this that represents a huge number of students, first of all, just in that sample size, but also that a student could make exceptional progress and still land in the same color band. And I think that's really important because I can tell you, I taught 5th grade for many years in this district, and I would have students that would make phenomenal growth. I would have a student that started at 35% accuracy. That means they were reading only 35% of grade level words in a text correctly. And by the end of the year, they could read 75% correctly. And oh my goodness, what huge growth to celebrate, several grade levels worth. But they're still in the red because the goal for 5th grade is 96% accuracy. So that student would not be represented in a graph like this as far as movement goes, but that represents huge growth that isn't necessarily represented in a snapshot. So one of the things that we've been doing is working with our ECRI coaches that have been coming in as well and looking at the data a little bit more granularly. So looking at, okay, truly within these bands, what is the growth that our students are making and where are those needs? And there's actually so much to celebrate when we dive into those deeper levels. So one thing about Acadience, it's a great snapshot for us, but it's not going to be quite as sensitive when we're looking at a composite score as far as the individual measures go. So Cameron's done a wonderful job of adding some of those subtests of Acadience to the dashboard. So highly encourage you to check that out if that's something you're interested in. But for example, those of you who have been on the board for several years now know that we have gone full force into a focus on building those foundational skills for our students. And that all of the research shows us is going to impact accuracy scores first, then eventually fluency, then eventually comprehension, and then eventually that really complex demonstration on OSAS. And so I share that not to say that we are where we want to be, but that there are some more sensitive measures that are not necessarily represented by this data that I do want to celebrate, because our teachers are working so hard to make that growth, and it can be really disheartening when we look purely at composite score. So I want to frame that and also share that I know Rochelle mentioned too, one of the things that happens is the older a student gets, the greater range of grades that represents below grade level. So if you had a student who was in 8th grade, they now have grades K through 7 of grades that they could have gaps in, versus a 2nd grade student who is only, there's only been K1, 2. So that gap in potential skills widens as students get older. So we want to keep that in mind too as we look up through the grade levels. So what you have here is grades K through 2, and really similarly to math, looking at those percentages from beginning of last school year to end of year last year. This is not exact cohort data because students move in and out, but should be fairly representative of that change. So again, I shared about that red zone representing such a wide range of students. We did have that zone decreased by 10%. Of course, we want to see that be greater, but I do think that's, again, keeping in mind that's from that well below all the way into a new color band, which is pretty significant. And we increased that percentage of students at or above benchmark. And again, that's readiness for that grade level core instruction without extra supports, up to 51%. So again, not quite where we want to be, but moving in the right direction. And then if we could move to grades 3 through 5. Again, that needle, it gets a lot harder to move as we move into the intermediate grades because it represents a wider range of skills and a greater complexity of text. So again, we went from that at or above benchmark being 43% in fall to 48% in spring. Again, want to see that be higher, but also want to celebrate the movement that did happen there. I think, again, one of the pieces to keep in mind there is that when we're talking about this significant growth that needs to happen for our students, we also want to be thinking about reading a little bit differently than math, in that a lot of the research shows us that in math, students really need those prerequisite skills before they can move on to the next skill. Reading research looks a little bit different in that students can simultaneously be learning more complex grade level skills with supports as they're filling those gaps that they might have in foundational skills. So one of the things that I know we're starting to talk about more with our schools is how do we ensure that even students who are reading below grade level and have those foundational skills needs are able to also get access to that grade level complexity and are having opportunities to grapple with more complex texts. Because a student, for example, doesn't need to be able to read a text independently to identify the theme of a complex story. Many of our students could talk to you about that, but if we don't give them that access, they don't have the opportunity to build that muscle, and unfortunately, then that gap just widens and widens. So I know that one major focus of myself and of our 2 early literacy coaches who share our 9 schools among them is really looking at, okay, how do we simultaneously build these foundational skills while also giving students that access to grade level instruction, because truly that acceleration is where we'll start to see the dial move more significantly. And Brooke shared about our OSAS data. Ultimately, that's where we're going to see the end goal of this, and that's a long road to get from phoneme segmentation to, writing with complexity, comparing to grade level texts and identifying the nuances of those and all of that. So we'll go ahead and move on to the next slide. So this one is similarly to math, looking at where do our students start the school year. So again, we want to see that number rise from year to year, but this is not at all cohort data. So this is our students who were in grades K through 2 in 22-23, and then whoever was in K2 in 23-24. So no, that doesn't include the students who moved from 2nd to 3rd grade. So this is really more of a systems measurement of how are our students coming in from grade level to grade level. And one of the things that I think is really exciting here is seeing in K through 2 that jump that we've made over the course of these last few years in where our students are starting the year. And so if you have been around a while, you know our curriculum adoption process that's near and dear to my heart. I know Stephanie mentioned it. We adopted our current reading curriculum 22-23 was our first year of implementation. Typically, you would expect to see what's called an implementation dip, or a couple of years where performance actually goes down often when you are implementing a new curriculum. And we actually didn't see that here. And so we had a pretty significant jump in those first 2 years. And we adopted ECRI, our really explicit foundational skills instruction, the same year we started HMH in grades K through 2. 3rd through 5th is a little bit different. As some of you got to hear at the end of last year, we have 2 incredible early literacy coaches who pretty much designed ECRI for our intermediate grades. It did not exist, and we recognized this critical need for more explicit instruction for our intermediate students, and that is now in year 2 of implementation. So when I share what's coming next, you'll get to see kind of where we're heading with that. But our hope would be we're starting to see that little bit of a bump. We went from 41 to 44 over the last few years, and expecting that with continued implementation, we will see that grow. One thing that I'm also very interested in, and I really enjoy looking at the data, is we have places where the maintenance, kind of exactly what you were talking about, Heather, that percentage that goes from, you would love to see that end of year match pretty closely to the beginning of the year for next year. We're not necessarily going to see growth over the summer, but can we avoid that summer slide and can we maintain? And we have pockets where we are seeing that very much maintained or even accelerated. And so I'm wanting to look at what are the practices that are happening there and how can we replicate those, because there are places where we're seeing that percentage maintained from year to year at a greater rate. And then we can go to the next slide. So what's happening for K-8 literacy? That top box, very, very similar, if not identical to the one that Rochelle shared, is that one of the focuses that both Rochelle and I have right now is a laser-like focus on how do we support our schools in improvement. So we have many schools that are identified for improvement. It's called TSI, or Targeted School for Improvement, based on our OSAS scores. So at the end of the day, regardless, there's different mixed feelings about standardized testing, but ultimately that is one of the measures that we are measured against at the state level. And frankly, I think we need to be looking at that because ultimately those tests represent the rigor of the standard, and we want our students to be able to perform there. And so I tend to think we don't want to teach to a test, but if that test truly represents what the rigor of that grade level should look like, we want our David Douglas students to be able to perform there the same as if they lived in any other district around us. And so one of the things that Rochelle and I have been doing is engaging in some really deep learning about how do we use OSAS data, which is often seen as very systematic, or system-wide, to help make improvement moves at the school level that can help move that dial. And so we've been engaging in a lot of learning that now is enabling us to support our schools at a greater level with reaching for those goals and to really understand what is even being assessed, because there tends to be kind of a thought of the test comes from someone who does not know our students or does not know education. But I actually had the opportunity several years ago to be on the item writing team for this test, and it was a group of teachers sitting in a room writing not only the questions, but also the passages that students were reading. And so I think when we kind of peek behind the curtain a little bit, it's really hard to say that our students shouldn't be able to do this. And so I know that's really something that Rochelle and I are actively trying to support in our schools. As far as our K through 5 focus, we are entering year 2 of 3rd through 5th grade ECRI. They've actually already had one cycle of coaching this year, which is very exciting. And we are bringing back coaching for our kindergarten through 2nd grade teachers who it's been a few years since they've had that intensive coaching. We've learned so much and are so ready to make some refinements that we truly believe will even sharpen that focus at a greater level for our K through 2 teachers and ultimately students. We've also created this internal program where we've now got internal trainers, coaches, and lab classrooms that are all David Douglas teachers and instructional coaches. So people within our district who can model what this should look like. As part of bargaining, we've now also got a more streamlined assessment plan. So one of the things that came out of bargaining was creating an assessment work group, and all of us content specialists had the opportunity to serve on that team and to collaborate with teachers. And I think we have a much more streamlined approach to what is the assessment data that we complete throughout the year, so that those end of year assessments aren't a surprise when we see the results, but that we truly know where our students are at. And then the other big change in K-5 is aligning our writing curriculum with the science of writing. So we've been talking about the science of reading a lot, but there is also a lot around the explicit instruction that our students need in writing. So we've now mapped the writing curriculum and are working on supporting our teachers in learning the skills that are necessary to implement that. At grades 6 through 8, we have a lot of changes this year. We added a core supplement program called Morpheme Magic. It's a morphology program. So if you think of morphology, that's prefixes, suffixes, and Greek and Latin root words. So really filling our students' toolboxes so that when they encounter those long multisyllabic words, they are able to identify what some of those parts might mean and be able to determine the meanings of those words across subject areas. So very, very excited about that. We're kind of calling it ECRI for middle school. It's a lot less explicit, but our teachers, many of them for the very first time, are getting training in how to deliver that type of instruction that our students need. We've adopted a new intervention program in collaboration with teachers from all 3 middle schools, and a new assessment because our teachers and administrators told us loud and clear we need that assessment. The one that we used to use was sunsetted by the company, and so we went 1 year without that data, and now we have what I consider a very robust and nuanced assessment to be able to pinpoint more where our students are at in middle school. We've also made adjustments to our curriculum maps to ensure that students are getting earlier exposure to critical skills in middle school and getting more opportunities to practice those before they take a high-stakes test at the end of the year. So that was some really intentional rearranging. And then as Rochelle mentioned, we are looking at how do we build disciplinary literacy across subjects. So that Morpheme Magic program where students are learning those Greek and Latin roots and whatnot, they are now tomorrow going to, in math and social studies, those teachers are going to learn how can they use those exact same strategies and language to teach vocabulary in their classrooms. And science will eventually follow when they're not on a brand new adoption. So we'll make sure that they are getting that as well. But all of the research shows us that that is a clear lever that we need to move for students, helping them to apply those same strategies and get more practice opportunities across their day. I think you've got one.
So as Francesca referenced, we have a new middle school screener this year. We're pretty excited about it. It's called CAPTI Read Basics. And instead of just one score that we used to get, now we've got a bunch of subtests that you can read up on the, either in your report or on the screen. And the CAPTI Read Basics, the students are going to take assessments in word recognition and decoding, vocabulary, morphology, sentence processing, reading efficiency, and reading comprehension. And each of those is scored. It's not one composite score with everything. So teachers, coaches can go through and see where the strengths are, where the weaknesses are, and address those. You can have a student who's strong in some areas but weak in the others, and in the past you wouldn't know that, and maybe they just kind of get pushed on through, and they still have these, these lacking somewhere. They can still navigate the education world, but man, wouldn't it be a lot easier for them if we could fill those holes, so to speak. So we just finished up our beginning of year assessment last Friday. We're meeting with our CAPTI rep tomorrow with our middle school ELA, ELD, and a handful of other relevant professionals that will be at district office tomorrow to go over all that data. So we're really excited about that. And as we move into the middle of year and end of year, we'll be able to provide data and show the growth and changes that take place and give you more of a give you something to grasp onto and understand how it operates.
Thank you very much. This is wonderful and lots of good information and understanding how it's being implemented and what you're learning. I really appreciate the whole spectrum of what you're bringing tonight. So thank you. Any questions for our team before we move on? Yes, please.
I know the history of assessment is inequitable, and so I was curious about if there's outreach to parents to re-explain and reteach what the assessments are, because I loved hearing that you were saying there's teachers behind these questions, and who are they, and how are they represented, and who, there's a whole movement against assessment testing, so I just want to acknowledge and see if there's communications to families on please don't opt out, and also if you have to, let's talk about it.
There hasn't been in a long while, but it's definitely something we want to bring back. prior to COVID, with the opt-out, especially with the OSAS assessments, principals actually met with parents that were indicating they wanted to opt out to explain, here's what this is, you know what I mean? Because a lot of times, like you said, for various reasons, families opt out. So we want to make sure families are making the most informed choice for their child based on accurate information. We haven't done that since COVID, but it is something we want to figure out. How do we bring back more of that family so they know what it's about and what it means? Thank you for bringing that up.
Since we're on the topic of assessments and how much people love assessments, the legislature and the governor really wanted more assessments. So recently that law passed with accountability, and there's going to be a whole extra metric. Have we thought, because I don't remember when it gets implemented, can you speak a little to what you're looking at to maybe adding, et cetera, et cetera?
Absolutely. I am, Senate Bill 141, I think is what you're referring to, which is kind of generally called Oregon's accountability bill at this point. And it is, I would say, at least in my tenure in education, it's a pretty significant shift for Oregon as far as accountability goes. The kind of big things to know about it are that it has, I guess, two-pronged. One is that starting next year, we'll have interim assessments that will be required, and those will be given 4 options by the state for both math and language arts. And districts will be required to adopt one of those 4 and deliver them 3 times a year, with those results being presented both to yourselves and publicly as well. I am actually really excited about the addition of those interim assessments. I know Rochelle and I have both been looking at how can we leverage more of those points throughout the year. Again, as I said earlier, to not be surprised when we get our end of year data, but to truly know where our students are at as we move throughout the year. But I know that will also come with some growing pains as well. The other prong of that bill is really about what happens when districts are not making the growth that's expected or the achievement levels that are expected. And it's really a matter of increasing accountability over multiple years. So as schools go on more and more years without achieving those goals, there's increased intervention by the state. So state prescribed coaching that increases in levels of intensity, ultimately to, I think it's 4 years in, where the state can actually essentially take over 25% of your budget to determine how it is utilized as they see fit to move that dial. And so regardless of how people feel about that accountability piece, that is something that we are very, very aware of, and we want to avoid that, not just because we don't want that oversight, but because we want our students to be achieving at the level that would avoid that. And so definitely on our radar. I think definitely something that's going to be conversation with administrators this year as we prepare for next year and what that truly looks like. And that's also been something that's really moved Rochelle and I in the direction of how can we best support our schools with this and truly understanding what that data means and what kinds of questions are students being asked and how can we prepare them for those and all of that. It's kind of been I would say the silver lining of it is that we are truly diving in a level deeper than I think we have, at least in my term in this role. So I think with caution saying I'm actually very much looking forward to that and what it could mean for our students.
And part of that bill was also one of the assessments is you get a choice, like every district picks. Have you talked about what this district is going to look at?
We'll get 4 choices from the state, and those will come out in January, and then those will be selected for adoption starting that September would be when we would do the first one. So we don't know yet what those options will be. There's currently a request out for companies to say we would like our assessment considered. So I'm hopeful that we have the opportunity to look at several options, and depending on cost and on feasibility and all of that and how it would best meet our needs, that we're able to select one that we feel good about moving forward.
Thank you.
I have a question. It's maybe really naive. Why couldn't we use the results from OSAS as our accountability?
Go ahead.
So we would be using the results from OSAS, and by we I kind of mean the state, right? Like that is where we use that. The other assessment that's kind of still pending, the interims it's called, that would happen 3 times a year. Those are assessments we get, and we haven't seen which ones they are yet, but they're intended to help a district, a school, to know progress towards OSAS or end of year expectations. So right now, some districts do what we do. We have iReady, we have Acadience, we have different metrics. Some districts across the state don't. And so what I see this accountability bill is trying to level the playing field with strong expectations and strong practices, no matter how big or small your district might be. We all need to be doing checks for progress across the year if we want to reach those OSAS achievement standards. So I would say we're already in line. We just need to now see, are the assessments that we currently use eligible? And if not, then which ones are we going to need to swap out for?
Thank you so much.
I talk too much, but before you leave, I'm going to say one more thing. I was recently talking to some parents from a much more affluent school district than ours, and she took her kids out of public school because their kids are all rich. So the teachers don't have to think of different ways to teach their kids to help them improve. So when she talked to the teachers, they didn't know about any of the things she was learning or better ways to teach English, reading and math. So she took her kids out of public school because there, a kid struggles, they just get a private tutor. And so I want to appreciate you a lot, because I know our kids struggle, but you also make the effort to find all the different ways to teach our kids better. And a lot of people don't do that. You think that everyone would, but when I found out, I'm like, I was telling them about what they were doing at Equity for 3rd and 5th grade, the different things that we were trying to do. So thank you for all your work.
They are a phenomenal team. Yes, they're a phenomenal team, and I do want to give a shout out to our early literacy coaches too, because they wrote the 3.5 ECRI version, Enhanced Core Reading Instruction. I know we're using a lot of acronyms, and other districts, a lot of other districts are asking, hey, can we get that from you?
Income stream.
Trademark. What are the ramifications? So that's just a huge testament to the work taking place.
Thank you, Brooke. I believe you're the presenter on Division 22 standards?
Yeah, sorry, you could hear more. So Division 22, woohoo. We will go through this. And for our new board members, I'll give a background of what Division 22 standards assurances are. You heard Rochelle reference it a little bit in response to some of the standards we're held accountable for. So this is a yearly requirement that every school in the state of Oregon is required to bring forward to their board and their community to show compliance with standards that all districts are held accountable to. Okay, so Sandy, if you can go to the next one. So what are they? What are the Division 22 standards? So they're standards for public, just like students have standards that they need to achieve, so do districts, so to keep us at a high operating level. So all elementary and secondary schools in Oregon are accountable to these administrative rules. They're standards that the Oregon legislature and state board has determined must be met in order for us to be a standard school district and in compliance. And I think the biggest thing is it ensures a baseline level across the state. We could always do more, but this is the equity. Regardless of what school district a student goes to, we can guarantee that this is what's going to be happening in each of those school districts. Next slide, Sandy. So Division 22, there are newer categories. It changes a little bit every year, but they've been reimagined into these 5 categories here: high quality learning experiences, aligned and focused educational systems, engaged partners and communities, safe and inclusive schools, and committed and supported staff. There are 57 rules that cabinet, this isn't me, but our whole cabinet team comes together and we review these administrative rules to assess compliance that fall within each of these 5 categories. Next slide. So these are just some examples of the things that are included under each of these. So for example, when you talk about high quality learning experiences, Some of the standards address diploma requirements, and in my world is the instructional materials adoption. So we look at, are we on track with our state adoption? Have we met requirements if we're postponing an adoption? Which, if you looked at the report, we are in a postponement for high school health. So this is where we start assessing and looking at some of those things. But you can see all the way through what are some of the standards underneath these big headers. And these are also in the report that was included in your board packet if you want to dig deeper with that. Okay, next slide, Sandy. If you want to read even more, you have 3 options you can look at. So, and these are all live links for anybody at home. This will also be on our website as required. But if you want just high-level summary, you can see the at a glance. If you actually want to read the actual text of each of these administrative rules, they're there for you as well. And also, the Oregon Department of Education does a really great job kind of breaking it down. What does this look like in real life? And explaining, because each district may interpret these a little bit differently, so they have done a real good job trying to put boundaries and explain at different times through a newsletter what the standards mean. Next slide. So again, it's an accountability model, and I think this is going to increase under, Senate Bill 141 and the new accountability. I think the state is really looking, and it's a long time coming. I think it's ready. So there's local accountability, our accountability to the board and our community that we report to you every year by November 1st. And again, this also has to be on our website by November 1st. And then the state accountability, we take this presentation, and you're not approving anything, you're just acknowledging that we presented to you tonight, but we also are required to submit assurances to the state by November 15th. And whatever we report to the state, they will follow up with us. And there's a couple places this year they're going to follow up with us, and that's totally okay, which I'll get to in just a moment. Next slide. Okay, here's the why, which I kind of already addressed. It's high quality educational and equitable experiences across our entire state. And it's an opportunity for us as a cabinet team to reflect on where we are we in compliance, and maybe some new changes or where we need to improve or things we need to implement. And you're going to see a couple areas tonight. Next slide. So what happens if we're out of compliance? It's never a gotcha with the Oregon Department of Education. It's, okay, what are you going to do to get yourselves back into compliance? So we submit the report, and we submit a report with corrective action. We're not in compliance right now, but here is what we are going to do. And we have until the following school year to get into compliance. So I should say we're also always reflecting on the year prior. The reason, so this report for you today is the 24-25 school year. Why are we reflecting on the last year? Because sometimes we need that whole year to make sure that we are in compliance, because sometimes things haven't happened yet. So they don't want us to get to say, oh, we're in compliance, and then we realize, well, that didn't happen yet. So we're always looking at the year before. So they will look at our corrective action, like we're not in compliance. Here's what we're going to do. They will either approve it, they'll say that looks great, or they'll come back and they'll give us some more support and say, I think you need to change some things. So they give us feedback on the report, and then we implement the corrective action. Here's the thing though, if we fail to come back into compliance after that timeline, ODE may withhold a portion of our state school fund. I don't know if that's ever happened, but it is out there. We always come back into compliance, though, so not to worry. Okay, next slide. For example, last year on the 23-24 report, we said we were out of compliance with our comprehensive school counseling, and I'm going to turn that over to Florence to explain what happened.
What we ended up doing was we developed a district counseling team comprised of administrators and school counselors, K-12, and developed a district plan, and then each school broke off from that district plan and developed building level plans. So every building in our district has a comprehensive school counseling plan based off of a framework at the district level. So we are now in compliance.
So now as we look at the 24-25 school year, There are a couple things to note. So the assessment of essential skills, these are waived. This is exactly what Rochelle was speaking about when we talk about our high school students. Not necessarily buying into those assessments, right? Like, why do I need to take this assessment? It doesn't matter for my grade. It doesn't matter for graduation. It's just an assessment we take for accountability. That's a hard sell right now sometime with our high school students, but these assessments of essential skills used to count towards, it was a graduation requirement. So because of COVID, these are still, you can see they are waived through the end of the 27-28 school year. And that has been brought up to the state, like you're increasing accountability, but yet we have these opt-outs and these waived standards, which make it harder for schools to meet these accountability requirements. So that has been brought up in some meetings that I've been in. But just to know, these are Division 22 that are currently waived. Next slide, please. Here's some new things from last year was to have a planned K-12 instructional program for social emotional learning. Which we embedded for elementary. We didn't want to add one more thing, so we embedded that work into current curriculum. So where does social emotional learning show up in our language arts curriculum, in our social studies work, in our health? There were so many connections. Our secondary schools have different programs, Character Strong for middle school, and Wayfinder. I always want to say Wayfinder for high school. The second one was a planned instructional program for high school, which includes personal finance education. So excited to see that come back as a requirement, and a career path skills content standards. So if you look at the new graduation requirements, you will see both of those in there. And we worked with high school teachers this year to get curriculum and set some of that scope and sequence. So those were some new pieces that were added. So it's like you can say these OERs, they change, new things are added, they're refined. So that's why we look at them every year. Next slide. Here is some new rules also in effect with our modified diplomas, providing parents with information about diploma availability and requirements. On-site access to all courses. You guys can read these. Also, great to see this come into play too, a substance use prevention and intervention plan. We're going to talk to you a little bit more about this one, but it requires a plan as well as having a minimum of one ODE, opioid prevention education lesson in 6, 7, 8, and in high school. Those are state lessons that have been written for us that we're required to deliver. But we also need to have a more comprehensive written plan that we're going to talk to you about in a moment. Next slide. So this year we assessed 57 standards that we looked at. We divide them out amongst our team, and each cabinet member takes an area that they work with. They read the OER and then determine if we're in compliance, and we talk about what evidence do we have to show if we're in compliance. So this year, we said 55 standards were in compliance, but we did identify 2 that are out of compliance that we need to have corrective action for. Next slide. Sandy. The first one was required instructional time, and this is at the high school. So I should say the high school has a higher bar they have to meet for required instructional time by the state. K-8 has 900 hours per year, but if you look at the high school, 9th through 11th grade have 990 hours they're required to meet, and seniors have 966 hours, and that's again baseline. We were short with our freshman through junior 2 hours and 22 minutes, and for our 12th graders, we were short 6 hours and 16 minutes. Why? It was inclement weather. We had one heat closure, I think the very first week of school last year, and then we had 2 snow days in February. So that put them out of compliance. So with high school, it's always a thin margin. And I do want to say, the state will tell us what's allowable with instructional hours. So for example, we can count 30 hours of professional learning. So tomorrow students don't have school, but teachers will be engaged in professional learning. We get to count that as required instructional time. We get to account parent-teacher conferences. We get to count that time. But what we can't count at the high school is we can't count any passing time. So if you know our high school, I believe they have 10-minute passing time. It's a huge campus. We can't count any of that time as required instructional time. So there's little nuances that, work to get in the way. So we were short. So our corrective action, if you go to the next slide, our current schedule is designed to meet instructional hour requirements for this year, provided there's no inclement weather or unforeseen disruptions. But what we do commit to doing with cabinet and high school administrators is to find where we can add maybe more instructional time and conduct periodic reviews to make sure if we do need to add back time or have those conversations. So we don't find ourselves at the end of the year being short, just to ensure ongoing compliance. The next one, this is the substance use prevention and intervention plan that we were just talking about, and I might have Florence speak to that a little bit more.
Within the substance use and prevention and intervention plan, there are a few components that make up a comprehensive plan. ODE has given us a template that we can use to get into compliance for this. But a majority of this piece to get into compliance is board approval and community input, which is one piece we have not done yet. So that is what our corrective action will be, is to share our plan with you and review it, get that community feedback, and then hope to get that board approval. The components include, and I think you can go on to the next slide, is curriculum and instruction. So we have health lessons. One of the other components is policy. So there's board policy around drug and alcohol and opioid use. We may be missing an opioid board policy specific to opioids. And then a referral process and intervention, which we do have in place. And then communication is the third component of it, which includes feedback from our community and our board, and then board approval. So the last two components of our plan that we want to make sure that we do this year is that community feedback and our board approval. So that is what we will do for this corrective action and timeline.
So that is the report for, question, yes.
Is it a typo that the actual report, because we also attached the report, the actual report is a third report.
For the
educational leadership.
I think that's an error. Yeah, for the educational leadership. Yes, because we have until, thank you for catching that. We will correct that. Thank you for bringing that up. So 1 year from now, at the October board meeting in 2026, we will be talking about this year's compliance and where we are. So they're giving us a heads up. ODE is saying, hey, you guys need to be aware. Here's some new standards you're going to be reporting on next year. So if you look ahead, next slide, Sandy. Educational Equity Advisory Committees. Well, it does say, so that's work happening for this year. Tata, do you want to speak to that?
In fact, we just completed and closed out the interest form. We had a total of 44 participants reach out, so we were very excited. Of those 44, we will be asking that 30 continue the engagement and moving forward with us. So that email went out today, and we are hoping to have something scheduled in the coming weeks for our first kickoff meeting.
Yeah, so this is something that every district in the state is now required to have. So that's super exciting as of this year. So that's exciting. If you go to the next one, again, there's new rules around state assessments and the added SEED survey, Student Educational Equity Development. It's part of OSAS component. This is a fairly new survey. We're still looking at the uses for it. It doesn't allow us to disaggregate any data, but it is a required assessment, student assessment that we give to get student voice. There's added ELPA screeners we're going to be looking at, and then there's some added clarification language. So those are new ones we're going to be looking at this year. And then the final slide there, this is where I think the error happened. As we were looking at educational leadership administrative standards, that little last one right there, this is how we evaluate our principals and all of our district office administrators. I don't know if Andy, if you want to say anything, but there's new standards that we have until September 30th, 2027. So they're just giving us a heads up. So I think we just missed that and we marked, no, we're not using those standards yet, right? But we will by September 30th, 2027. So we are in compliance with our educational. Andy, what's the current ones that we use, the standards?
Oh, educational leadership. I can't recall.
Okay.
I can't recall. Yeah, we wrote it in there. Instructional leadership for student achievement.
Okay, yes. So we will update that and change that. Thank you for catching that, Stephanie. Was it Heather? Jose? Okay. So you guys can see, looking back on 24-25, we have the 2 areas we're out of compliance with, and then, looking ahead, you can see what's coming and things that we need to start working on this year. So given that, do you have any questions?
No, thank you, Brooke. Thank you so much.
Can I just quickly, I just want to say thank you to Brooke for her leadership. I also want to recognize Lori and Sandy, who spend a lot of hours on these reports and information, and then all of Cabinet. I'm very proud, although I'm not proud to say that we have some areas we're not in compliance, but I'm proud how seriously we take it as a district to dive in. That's all I'll say, but our district, we take it very seriously, and we go through it, and we acknowledge it, and in fact, to the point where last year we said, hey, we're out of compliance with the counseling standards. The first thing we get is a call from ODE saying, hey, will you come communicate and show us what you're doing in training and use us as a model to kind of how we're doing some of this. So although, again, we find areas that we can improve and we own that, we also take it very seriously, and there's not a rubber stamp on any of these. We make sure. And one last is reaching out to our principals and others just to spot check. Is this happening? Is this right? Is this going on? So anyway, just thank you, Brooke and team, for the work we put into this, because it matters. So thank you.
I have a really quick question just around the opioid curriculum. Who do you look to for guidance on how to develop that?
Luckily, the Oregon Department of Education has they developed the lessons for us. And so they, I don't know what their process was to develop the lessons, but we are given those lessons, and then we share that with our staff. And there's also some state trainings that they can go to. We also have a science and health TOSA who can help support in implementation of delivery of those lessons. But we are not creating those lessons or going out. They are common lessons across the entire state.
Thank you.
Thank you. Next on the agenda, we have the consent agenda. Can I have a motion?
I move approval of consent agenda.
Second.
Is there any questions, discussion on the consent agenda items? If not, can we take roll call? Director Ender?
Ender, aye.
Stevenson, aye.
Epstein, aye.
Kimmer Jerson, aye.
Jordan, aye.
Stevens, aye.
Franklin, aye. Thank you. Okay, next, bond update. Pat, please.
Sure. So most of our renovation projects from this summer are wrapping up. We've got a few punch list items on several of them to finish, a little bit of commissioning. West Powellhurst still is the one where we had a couple late HVAC units ship, and they got pushed out a little later. So we are hoping that they will be here the end of the month for installation. The CTE Center still on track for opening at semester break. We did have an issue. I was over there today looking at the conduits in the columns there where the two overhead walkways meet. And so the way it was designed was a little funky, and the way they put the conduits in is a little odd. So we're working through that, and then we were working through some auto shop furniture, different things that they wanted to do, and the contractor that we had selected didn't like some of the insurance requirements, and so we're working around that. I think we finally got that figured out today. And we are working on our designs for next summer's projects and starting to get ready to bid out on some of those long lead items. And we are getting ready to poll for a bond oversight committee. It'll either be late this month or early next month for a meeting. And then they'll come in and give you an update either next month or in December. Any questions?
Thank you, Pat. Ken?
Yes, thank you very much. Just a couple quick items tonight. They aren't quick, but I'm going to make them quick and then follow up and or, of course, there's any questions. The very first thing is just enrollment, just to formalize for the board, October to kind of scale and where we're looking at. I've sent you enrollment updates for the last few weeks, and it's pretty volatile up and down depending on what's going on. So we track every day. Then we have what's called a 10-day withdrawal. By law, if students are not showing up for 10 days straight, we have to withdraw them. Once we do that, things stabilize a little more. Now we're to a point where we're pretty stable, and unfortunately, we are looking at about 8,430 students, which is down about 2% right now. So we're going to get into grade levels, and the next we have a financial report Pat's going to share and just show the grade levels so you see the bumps a little bit. But right now, again, I've already talked to the board about this. Unfortunately, enrollment is trending down, which will impact revenue, will impact budgets, and not today, it's not immediate, but there's impacts that we'll be talking about and connecting with. So the couple things I'm proud of, and I want to context this, is when you look at our elementary schools, and I know we heard some very serious concerns, which are real concerns. I've tried to keep the board updated on those a little bit as well. There are real concerns. But overall, if you look at our class size average, which is different, right? It's kind of hard because we budget out and we average because you're going to have bubbles, right? So elementary, our highest average is 26.5, which I wish that was lower. And then our lowest is 20.6. And the average across all the elementary schools is 23.6. So we have worked hard to definitely keep that average down, but in any average, right, there are bubbles. And the one where I read the highest, 26.5, we heard a lot from tonight from Gilbert Park. That's our highest, and I think I've talked about Gilbert Park right now is growing. There's enrollment there. So the reality is I just wanted to share that some of the work, the budget process that the board engaged in, I am proud that we're trying to keep those class sizes down, with also acknowledging there are bubbles and there's some difficult situations definitely within our schools. On top of that, I want to share and remind the board that last bargaining, we did implement a $300,000 fund for class size reduction specifically. And we've been working in partnership with DDA leadership. Alice is in the room. We're really close to finalize that. It's really Alice and Andy have done all the work behind the scenes on this, and we're close to where we'll be using those funds to help subsidize and help bring down class sizes. So the reality, just kind of sharing, unfortunately, it looks like enrollment's continuing to trend down. If you think the long term, last year we had a little flat, maybe up, we were hoping, but trended down, and you'll see more on the financial report in about a minute here. The second thing, this is a part I'm not going to go into detail on. I have provided detail, but I'd be remiss if I did not communicate that besides all the work that you're hearing about today and tonight and the work we're doing, great work, we're also looking at tracking, monitoring 4 specific things that I want to make sure the board's aware of. One, the federal shutdown. We know where we're at in that and don't know when it's going to end. Immediate impacts, we don't have immediate, but there are definitely possible longer term impacts that I'll be communicating with the board on as it continues to move forward if it does. 2 is HR1 and what's coming out of HR1 and the impacts to the state of Oregon. Specific impact to the state of Oregon, I believe they're saying $888 million, and specifically to education is $370 million impact just from that alone. And I know Stephanie specifically has talked a lot about our social services that our entire state depends on, but we know in our community we depend on handing and supporting our families, and there's tremendous impacts there we'll get into probably later. Also, Governor Kotak's spending slowdown request, kind of through we're tracking that. What does that mean? Specifically ODE, I believe it's about a $2.15 million reduction. So services from ODE to us, right? Specifically to us in our budget, not direct impact. I will say yet, because the third thing is the Legislative Financial Office reduction request. And basically, they've directed all of the divisions of the state to put together reduction plans, right? Right now they're calling it an exercise. Right now they're hopeful that they won't have to implement them. Right now they're saying words like it's not to panic, it's to be prepared. Right now they are reminding us all that the state of Oregon has one thing that's much better than it was in 09, 10, 11 during the recession, and that's significant reserves. But those reserves aren't going to fix everything, right? But so all of those things are putting in play, and specifically I just wanted to add, where is it? That the timeline for that. So October 17th, draft options due to the Department of Administrative Services. November 3rd, final options due to the Legislative Fiscal Office. November 17th to 19th is when presentations to the legislature on reduction scenarios. And then finally, the possibility of February 26th, legislator will consider statewide rebalancing decisions. We're all very hopeful that won't occur. These are just snapshots, but we're in a very serious situation when it comes to funding, budget, state level, and that will trickle and hit education specifically. So this is not to quote unquote cause alarm, but it is for us to be prepared. This board has asked me to always be transparent. So that's what I'm trying to do without panicking, for lack of a better term. So with that said, two items I want to focus on more on the positive side, if you indulge me. First and foremost, a tremendous celebration, or we will celebrate, is October. There's a lot of things we can recognize, but one of the things I want to recognize is celebrating National Principals Month. So it is National Principals Month, so all of our principals throughout our district, just a tremendous thank you. Yeah, we got one out there in the audience. Yeah, so grab yourself an orange. Yeah, no, seriously. Thank you so much. And if you don't mind, I just want to read something here. October is National Principals Month, a time to recognize and honor the dedicated school leaders and administrators who work tirelessly to shape the future of our students. It's an opportunity to shine a well-deserved spotlight on the incredible contributions principals make every day to ensure schools are safe, supportive, and successful learning environments. What principals do every day? Principals play a vital role in the education system. They lead with vision and compassion, manage school operations, support and empower staff, and cultivate a culture where students can thrive. Whether it's making strategic decisions, resolving challenges, or celebrating student achievements, principals are the heart of what makes schools a community strong. Their leadership directly impacts student success, academically, socially, and emotionally. Through their unwavering commitment, principals inspire excellence, foster equity, and help prepare our youth for a bright future. This month and every month, we extend our deepest gratitude to our principals for their leadership, dedication, and tremendous difference they make in the lives of students, families, and educators. Thank you to David Douglas Principals for all that you do. Your work matters, and it does not go unnoticed. So a tremendous thank you to all of our principals, absolutely. And I wouldn't read that if I didn't mean it, but I will say this. I honestly, and I'm biased, I get it, but I honestly believe we have the best principals in the state. Their heart, as well as their expertise, they are here for kids, period. Without a doubt in my mind. The last thing, just for fun, let's see if I can get it come up real quick. I'm sorry. Yes. So if you did not see the high education in the Oregonian, I'm not going to read names, but I'm going to just read the headline. Students from David Douglas and Beaverton named the U.S. Presidential Scholars. So if you did not see this, one of our proud students or students we're very proud of won the Presidential Scholarship, very excited about it. It's a great article that recognizes him and his accomplishments. So that's my report this evening.
Thank you, Ken. Pat, with the financial investment report.
So Ken mentioned quite a bit of this already. We did get kind of a surprise meeting on Monday. We got called Friday to say, hey, can all the business managers meet Monday, which you don't often get with the state. And they did share basically the information that they shared with the superintendent. So they went over the federal shutdown, what the expectations can be as far as funding. They shared the results of, or what they anticipate the results will be of HR 1, which will result in a lot of federally funded programs that just simply won't have as many participants, therefore revenue will go down. So when we don't have folks apply for SNAP or Medicaid or are no longer eligible, then obviously the programs that rely on that data, nutrition, etc., those numbers will go down. They even talked about potentially getting out of CEP and going back to the income verification, and so they're trying to avoid that, but that was even a discussion point. As a reminder, Ken mentioned the economic forecast in August was down quite a bit, and that prompted the state to start working on reduction packages for all the different agencies. At this time, we have not been told that the state school fund will be affected, but definitely ODE is doing cut packages for this year. We will most likely see something. Whether it is doubled up for the second year is probably the bigger concern. So thinking about that as we're getting ready to prepare the budget for the 26-27 school year. As Ken mentioned, you can see our elementary numbers are down. Our projection, we were up a little bit in 24-25 from where we had projected. It went up towards the end of that fiscal year. What we projected was a little bit less because we know birth rates have gone down. We were hoping things would kind of stabilize, but we are seeing that we're down a bit, primarily in the elementary areas. So go down a little bit. Just some high points on general fund that I want to bring to your attention. So what we budgeted for beginning balance was 22.5. As I mentioned before, we're at 21.5. We also anticipated that the legislature would increase the high cost disability pool or carve out. That did not happen. So obviously my projection on that, we're going to need to adjust downward. And then we looking at our expenditures for the year right now, the ending fund balance is projected to be about 14.2 million. So putting that on your radar, because that's a pretty big hit for starting out for the 26-27 year. So we've spent down those reserves, and you know, it could be a little less, could be a little more, depending on where we end up with our revenue. Let's see here. Capital projects, we came in pretty close. We do have additional revenue and expenditures in that fund. Just a reminder, it's not just our bond, it's also the Portland Clean Energy Fund and that seismic grant that we received. So I had a few people going, why do we got more money in there? So any particular questions?
Just want to flag that we do have a budget workshop specifically to get into deeper discussions around this. I will say it just because if there's people that haven't gone through this and not tracking, or some of our public, this is painting a very difficult picture for our budget development. I mean, we've been talking about it since last year, so it's not necessarily new, but some of the other curveballs that have come our way are impacting us even harder. And again, things could change, things could shift up, but right now, just that reality of what we're looking at right now is a difficult budgetary process in the spring, is kind of as much as I could say, but just so the board's aware and our community's aware.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, next on the agenda we have as an action item, second read, board policy, CEA.
I move approval of the board policy on the agenda.
I second. Great. Discussion, please.
Kermit Jerson, aye.
Sorry, I thought the the policy group would say something.
Oh, yeah. Well, we talked about it last time,
Yeah.
and it was fine.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Okay, so everybody's okay to vote? All right. Director Ender. Ender, aye.
Stevenson, aye.
Epstein, aye.
Kermit Jerson, aye.
Jordan, I.
Stevens, aye.
Franklin, aye. All right, now we're on to board policy first read.
So I'll just say a little bit here. So policy review group took a look at these and invites you to take a look at them as well. They all seem to be pretty minor kind of corrections, additions. So nothing that like we were causing us to grapple with the why or if. But I would say the most interesting one to me is the directory information one, just because that it implicates, personal safety of students and families and the information that we share and how and why. So it's a good one for us all to come back to and understand and feel confident about. Any other words?
I'll just mention that in this policy grouping, there was also future conversation that we pushed for a future date to have around stipends, because we need to at least discuss, because the law has changed around board stipends and how they work and what we need to do. So that will come at a later date.
Great. Anything else on this topic? If not, we will move on to reflections on public comment.
What I will say is that I hear and understand all the concerns, and it's so hard to hear them when it feels like our hands are tied, with budget. And then every time we try to think of something, we get more news that budget is getting worse and worse and worse. And it's not like we can create income streams, and I don't want to lose all the great things we do in our district. That being said, I will say that I know it's a difficult time with the legislature, but I'm going to continue advocating for the SPED cap being raised and the high need disability, because I know those behaviors are not just that, but if we could fund just our special education better, I think we could fix those behaviors. So not all of them, but we could help have better support, and that will, I think people think that helps only the special education kids. And what we heard today shows that better funding in those areas help everybody. They help all these different classrooms and all these teachers that are having problems. Helps us with teacher retention. It helps in so many ways. So at least it was hard to hear these stories, but it helps me, where I spend a lot of time talking to legislators trying to get better funding, to be able to share these stories from the teachers straight to them. This is not just SPED funding. It's not just high need disability. This is how it affects every piece of education. So I appreciate the teachers taking their time to come and share those stories with us.
I intend to be a participant in the new work group around continuum services, and I lost my father on the 20th of September. So I've been sort of out of it, feeling kind of out of it today still, but I am very hopeful of surfacing some real ideas directly from the impacted teachers, and hopefully we can expand that even to community, because we can't wait until another biennium, which maybe we'll have one, even probably won't. I mean, I think we've all seen the direction that our state is going. We've seen the reductions in federal spending. We need to figure it out ourselves And I'm hopeful that we can at least put some things into practice, surface some things and put them into practice, because that was so hard to hear. Really, really hard to hear. So.
Yeah, I agree. I'm hopeful for the task force so that we can hear from everyone on the ground, teachers and IAs and everyone that's interacting, administrators that are interacting with these behaviors, and that that's new and elevated in levels that I don't know that we understand a lot. And I mean, as a parent, I mean, I hear about it from my kids. I know it's happening. If I go into any school, whether it's a liaison school or not, it's always top of the conversation. And you know, you can just feel it, that like secondary trauma that's kind of percolating. And I think we all can feel we do feel helpless in this a lot, but I am always glad to have that, like, there are things we can do. Let's figure some things out. So I'm really grateful for all the testimony tonight around that, and written testimony, and then just the ongoing conversation.
I don't, great if this could be answered tonight, but I'd love to hear at another board meeting, I hear the teachers from Menlo Park, and they say there's a process they have to go through, and it takes a long time. Why? Or what is it? Or why? I'm assuming if a teacher gets stabbed with scissors, something probably happened quickly, but if it's kid throws desks around the room, it's probably going to take a little bit longer. And I've been in those classrooms where it's like we just keep trying, but it just felt like those teachers were stymied by a system rather than the kids themselves, and it which I think exacerbates. And then also for me, hearing that I just hear kids acting out kind of the same out of control, helpless feeling that I think we all have as adults in this district right now, with just like what's going on around us, and then to see that come out of a 8-year-old, to me it makes perfect sense, but sucks that it's happening. What do we do about it? And I don't know that funding is the answer, because you're still going to put people there, and it's either the teacher gets stabbed with scissors or someone else gets stabbed with scissors. Is that, I guess I just struggle with not having the knowledge of like how this is managed. Because I get that there's the staffing shortages, but having an IA there, and now you just get the IA gets stabbed with scissors, or what do you do? What could we do? It'd be cool to learn more. It'd be great.
We can definitely work on a presentation for that to share with the board, to kind of what is our process, what's it look like, and then I can work with board leadership about board agenda and where does it fit and how, but we definitely could do that. That makes a lot of sense, yeah. And I will just say this, I absolutely understand what you say, and I get that, but funding and appropriate funding would make a huge difference. Yeah.
No doubt.
Yeah.
But
I know what you're saying, but
yeah. Thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you.
And it's especially just hearing from Menlo Park, and I know it's not just Menlo Park. We have public comment from, it's not, and I've seen it not at Menlo Park. If it's one student that is the problem among 25 to 30, what do we do? Because I don't want to say kick them out. That's an awful decision. It's not even, or like what's binding the hands of the district to do something. I would love to know more about all of that. Or even, I think there's options of like Fur Ridge is school for students who are having a little bit of trouble going to high school, is how I kind of like to think about it. If that's too simplistic, I apologize, but I feel like maybe there's middle school. I think we're working on that too. If like middle school for kids who are, maybe it's tough just going to general population middle school and getting them the extra support and where that comes from. So, thank you.
Madam Chair, I usually don't say anything about public comment, and this isn't really about public comment, but it's kind of okay. So I just want to thank Jacob for bringing a very serious topic up to the board, and I know your peers had conversations about this, and I think asked you to bring that, and I appreciate you bringing that to our attention, and just so you know, I shared with you, but we are aware of the situation. We're involved, engaged. I know the high school administration is as well, but I just want to, again, say thank you for bringing that. I know all of the what is it, HOCO, or we never called it that when I was in school, but homecoming, all of that stuff. We love all the positive stuff, but we want to know what's going on as well. When there's topics that you are navigating, struggling with, celebrate, whatever it may be, thank you for bringing that to us. Yeah.
I agree, and thank you, Ken, for reminding me. At a high school, what does it take to become a club?
What does it take to become a club?
Yeah.
So I'm going to take a little bit of a stab, but I want to confirm this with the high school. Typically what it takes is interest. And what I mean by that is students that say, hey, we're interested. And then typically, okay, students are interested. Is there a staff member or adult that's willing to be an advisor of that? And typically there is someone. So then they go to administration, and we have students interested. We have a staff member that's willing to be an advisor or provide supervision. Okay, we'll launch a club. That's very simple. I'm simplifying, and there might be a few more that I could get specifically from the high school, but that's typically what it looks like.
And in this instance, is when we say Club America, is that capital C club that's followed this process, or it's just a group of students who have said, we've formed a group called Club America?
No, my understanding is they follow the process. Again, how formal the process is or not, but that they, I mean, again, yes. For example, we knew they were meeting, that some other students knew they were meeting and wanted to be part of it and kind of see what it's all about. So I think it was advertised if they were meeting. So that's typically part of the process too. I'm speaking a little bit out of turn here and making some assumption, but I'm pretty solid. I don't know, Tay's been working on this a lot. Have you anything to add?
So what I do know is that students came together, had shown some interest. There was a teacher willing to facilitate the club. We knew based on the grounds of the name of the club being similar with Turning Point that there would probably be some concerns in regards to the club. So what we are leading with is to ensure that the club is situated around our expectations of providing a safe and welcoming environment at all times, but also ensuring that students feel like they belong. And what we know right now is that is not quite it. So we are at the very beginning of the investigation of just following up to see the real intent of the club. You may know more than I do, but this is sort of what's been shared with me. And I don't want to put you on the spot to have to share in this formal way, but whatever you're comfortable with sharing.
I know what I can answer is your question about how you start a club. You need 11 students to agree to join the club, like initially at the start. And then you need to find an advisor and a classroom. And then, you need to fill out like a paper that goes into the specifics of your club. Like, what are you guys going to learn? Like, what are you going to teach? The lessons plans, all of that. And then that needs to get approved, I think, through the activities director. But I don't know too much about it because, it's just, I know it's been advertised and that's all I can really say.
And I beg no one to read into this as a leading question, but is an advisor an employee of the district, or is it just anyone somehow affiliated?
Most times it's an advisor. There are some times I can think of in the past where some of our community-based organization and partners that are in our schools have been advisors as well, but typically it's a staff member.
Thank you.
And on that, I will say, if you talk to some of the students that you mentioned when you were talking about the students who were peacefully protesting, sitting there so they could listen and take part and doing it peacefully, make sure you know that that's appreciated. That's the right way to do it, right? It's instead of leaning into that and causing fights, to do that in that way is great. So.
Yeah, thank you, Jacob. Really, thank you for bringing that to our awareness. Yeah, and I do want to just also note that, we started off by talking about Hua, but also to have the community step up and talk about her impact on the, larger community, I think was really nice to hear. So I do want to highlight that too. If there's any other public comment reflections, we can go on to committee reports. I can start with that. I attended the foundation's meeting, the David Douglas Educational Foundation meeting, and learned a lot about that process and what they're, all the good work they're working on. And also, I think the big takeaway message that I took from it, and I want to plug, is that they really are looking to have new members join. There's, a real desire for, especially people that are with kids currently in the district or have some time to get involved. And so it was a pretty small group. And so I think that anyone who's interested in kind of in the world of what the foundation's doing, highly encourage in the community or otherwise to get involved with that. And then I was fortunate to attend Mill Park's back to school night, and Principal Craig secured a donation of 1,000 backpacks, and so I got to work the backpack table, which was pretty awesome. It was a very lively group, which was wonderful because it was just full, and everyone was excited, and pretty special space. So that's what I got.
I'm looking forward to Cherry Park's Try It Tuesday, this coming Tuesday, that I have been promised is going to be very special and very try it worthy. So thank you.
I was just gonna say I got to do a visit at Gilbert Heights Elementary and got to see like all the levels for just a moment. It's my first experience like watching ECRI in the 4th grade level. Okay, cool, yeah. And so that was neat, and also pretty much every room I went to is just I got that feeling that you very like loving, caring educators and engaged students, and a broad variety of learning styles being handled in a single classroom. I got to see a 30-kid 2nd grade class, 2 of them. Not exactly 30, but I got that feel, and it was great. It was great to talk to those educators as well about what that feels like, how they manage. But I recommend if anyone gets that opportunity with one of your schools to set up something like that where you get just a little bit of each level, each type of instruction.
Okay, I have some updates. I was able to visit my 3 liaison schools as well as MECP. Maybe you want to talk about MECP after. I'll do these and then you. Okay, cool. So I did visit Gilbert Park and was able to meet with Principal Luan Nguyen, and we talked about a couple of things. I'll start with the good. Academically, leadership feels really well supported in curriculum and academic studies, and technology and instruction. And their data meetings are really helpful in developing their strategic plan. They implemented the math data meetings this year and is really well received by teachers. So really appreciative about that. Class size. 1st grade has 3 classes that are very full, like 30 and 31 students, with over 20 students that have IEP accommodations. And we know that it takes a little bit of time to go through appropriate requests for support, and those are Principal Nguyen was very clear, and he understands those processes and appreciates the consistent communication. 3rd grade is also full, but recognizes that 3rd is different than 1st, and that just sharing that Gilbert Park has highest number of students in the past couple of years. I don't feel like I think that we had a good conversation about kind of what what teachers are feeling around the need for additional support. I think one of the things that we spoke about were the fact that some students entered the school year without any pre-knowledge or to the staff that they were going to need IEP or behavioral support. So that is kind of it. I think it caught the school a little bit with planning for support in classrooms. It's a little hard when we don't know what our students need. So just a little bit of, I think, shifting around for that and waiting for additional support. So yeah, that was Gilbert Park. It was great. Also went to Ron Russell Middle School and met with Principal Cowgill. Wins referrals are way down this September 2025 versus previous Septembers. The staff has almost no turnover from last year. They're feeling really great and united, and they're prioritizing clear and prompt communication with families after any kind of events happen. And they're offering a safety forum to parents and caregivers October 30th to share statistics on behavior and behavior kind of outcomes or what happens, safety practices. So Principal Cowgill was clear that she's really trying to distinguish behaviors that need to be managed within the classroom versus what needs to be managed in the office. Opportunities for improvement. Late start Wednesdays are really hard for the middle school because students sometimes gather in the beginning or the front of the building, and that has created some behavior issues, some fights. But Principal Cowgill's really great on just like thinking about logistics down to details, just opening up the school 10 minutes early so that there can be more of a flow, more staff to watch, so that everybody feels safe. And also the bell schedule, they have block schedules in the middle school, and it's preventing some kiddos or some students from taking the electives that they want. And so they're just thinking about maybe opportunities for a shorter schedule and not doing block. I'm not sure of the process, but just those conversations. And then last but not least, Principal Holly Schauer from Alice Ott. Wins I want to call out. Attendance rates are great. Enrollment is slightly up. Scores show improvement in math. They're very proud of that. The hallway, when I visited, students were there and it was like silent in the halls. They don't use the lockers anymore. They just have their backpacks, so there's no like clanging of the lockers, and they have a good process. She says it's really impacting just the environment of the school, and the office leadership team with the addition of the VP DJ is going really great, and they work really well together. Areas of improvement, exclusion disparities, they're focusing on that, and they had a low result from I'm forgetting the name of the surveys that kind of asked about True surveys or Youth Truth, thank you. The sense of belonging and like having a supportive adult were down, so they're trying to implement some additional like community nights and work on that, and building sense of emotional regulation skills for kiddos. Since COVID, she said we're just still recovering, and also classes are pretty full. And I wanted to just say we have such stellar principals. Like, it was a pleasure to meet with all three of them, and just, yeah, they're lovely and clearly really passionate. And I'll let Althea talk about MECP.
Sure, yeah, so Director Epstein and I got to go to attend the MECP admin meeting up near the airport, so neat to get to a non-school space, because I think that's what we've heard from that team is, they operate differently. They operate all over, and it's great to see, where their hub is, where their space is, meet their administrators. I think we voted on it today. They're excited to move into the Northeast Knott space that will help that allowed them to have more classroom services provided. And they I'm trying to think I'm gonna have to pull up your notes.
Sure. Well, I think one thing that Kevin really highlighted is he'd love to see a united representation at the Capitol to just lobby for more support and continued MECP support. And that's something that he would kind of look at dates and invite the whole board to attend. And also, I think one thing, just one stat that I didn't know, but MECP's contract is, of course, for, East County and Portland, and they have about 50% in the Portland area versus East County. So, did I say that correctly? And then the other thing that I wanted to bring up is that all of the directors at the table and administrators just said that their families are really feeling the impact of pressure around immigration status and the services that many of their clinicians provide in home have a different feel. Parents are more reluctant to share details about, and I have to be honest, in addition, I spoke to my sister who's an SLP through MECP, and parents are, they're more reluctant to share details about family life, which is crucial to providing services, because they really try and work with the family and provide a foundation, the pyramid model, not a triangle, of support within the family. And understandably, it just impacts how they deliver service, and they are doing their best to support their families, and they give great service. So it was a pleasure also to meet with them.
Yeah. Thank you. Go ahead.
I'll keep mine short, but the highlight for me, because my liaison schools, Menlo Park and the high school, they got it all together. But my highlight for me this week was they invited me to be part of the immigration committee, and I got to be part with the teachers and different staff members that have been working to help our families and for all the immigration-related issues. And I really appreciated seeing the kind of work they're doing and being included in that space, so much so that I'm taking the work they're doing and taking it with me to the OSBA convention so I could tell everyone they should do this because they need the help. So I appreciate being part of that committee quite a bit. Thank you.
I have updates as well. So I visited North Powellhurst, and I described it as a hodgepodge. I don't know if anyone has been there, but I talked to Shauna with the Online Academy. Shauna's amazing. Enrollment goes up and down, but tends to show trends of increasing, and so that's pretty exciting because I learned, I don't know why I didn't think about this, but students that are hospitalized as well have the option of Online Academy. So it's not just about what I've heard in the past and those options for them. That expulsion costs the district regardless. I did not know that. I had questions around, is reimbursement one-to-one for online or in person, which she believed it is. So her goal is to catch students who don't come back to school. So we don't want to pull from, in-person campuses, but to have families know that Online Academy is available, and for many reasons, for the whole year, for less than the year, you're going to be out of town for a month with your family for some reason, Online Academy is here. It was so great to learn all the details about it. And then she does wish it was an option that was uplifted earlier in a student's, plan before they're being, behaviorally assessed. And she doesn't know if that's currently happening. I did ask her questions around if we have access to info for homeschooled kids, if she knows of where they are. Do we have outreach for them? Why are they homeschooled? Do they know DDOA exists? Because they are using other facilities. So she wanted to look into that. Christy, I met, early learning admin. Ooh, we talked about preschool for all. MECP is also at North Palhurst. And so the biggest concern I heard around this campus is the communication. Because there's so many pieces in that campus, and there's no one that's really centrally communicating to Christy, to Shauna, to Kevin. I heard about Kevin. Kevin seems great too. But not in regards to the actual campus and the building. And she heard rumors. Is MECP leaving North Powellhurst? And who did she hear them from? And no one has confirmed. And are they moving, or are they just adding on rooms? I had no answers for that. So I hear you, Christy. Daycare, and I got to hang out with the babies. It was so cute. They also do the laundry for all of the daycare preschool areas, and they use, I forget the terminology they use, but they use students who want to go into hospitality, and so she takes them in. Chrissy has a whole background of working with SPED and IEP students and amazing stuff. They also house girls' baseball equipment. The theater stage is housing CDC, like child development supply. There's so much happening in that campus. I was just like, I need centralized communication for you all. And they do feel at times forgotten, so I don't want to leave that out. There's been certain things in the past where there's some staff there and they don't get a cake delivery until much later, or the break room didn't have a vending machine for several years. So they're very excited to have a liaison, and I'm here for you. I'm here for you. I also met with Susan at West Powellhurst, and we did a quick tour, and I went to their back to school night. So they're excited for the HVAC. And we're going to have some espresso pod coffee and talk more. That was great.
Yeah. Wonderful. Thank you for those updates. Those are really exciting. With that, we're adjourned. Thank you.